the overall government situation is going to pan out. So, you know, hoping to get some better prices, really.
Okay, that's good. Good. Okay, thanks. So hopefully, if you have any questions after the presentation, you can share them with us. So okay, good. Let me see. Anyone else with a hands up at all? Okay, there's no hands up again. Okay, so we let me just share a quick screen here. Screen share right now. Okay, so can you see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So welcome to the Ask the Entrepreneur. We've got our two property entrepreneurs on, whom very soon we will be able to ask any questions of them. But for now, and just before we actually get this started, I'll just do a few a short presentation on who we are, Midas. Funny enough, this is an interesting picture taken just probably 7 weeks ago. Myself and Richard Bowser planning how we're going to be conducting these events together in a packed room, of course. But this was like 7 weeks ago, and there's that iconic picture last time this event about say a couple of weeks ago, where Westbury Hotel had a note on the door saying the room is full to capacity, no one can come in again. Just fast forward, within a matter of like 7 weeks, we do not have a room. We cannot go into a room, but we are doing this online, and thanks to everyone that's taking time off to actually be on this session. It's a strong indication that we as humans, we have the greatest ability to adapt to any situation, and that whatever is thrown at us, we can adapt and cope with it. And I think this is a spirit that will see us through all these tough times. So I think from having hundreds of us in a room to having 100 of us online within a 7-week period, it's a remarkable change. And then in terms of our upcoming events, this evening we've got an event, a Zoom event from 6 o'clock, specialized just on tax. We had an event earlier, not long ago, the property question time, with about 400 people on it. The Q&A, about 80% of the questions were all tax related. So we thought tax seems to be the most taxing issue on people's minds, of course, after the virus. So we thought, let's have a session that's only based on tax, your normal tax, and how the current situation would impact your tax situation. So Ati, can you just share a link to that event this evening, please?
Yes, I will share it right now on the Zoom chat for the link for this evening's online Zoom webinar that we've got with Jamal Khan. So I'll just do that right now, guys. Thank you. And feel free to register and join us. It's going to be an amazing event. We're just sharing that right now.
Bit stagnant because viewings, there's an issue with viewings. I strongly believe after all this clears out, the auction will be one of the most preferred route to market for everyone, because the last thing you want is reluctant buyers or reluctant sellers. So the best way to assure if you wanted to sell your property is go to an auction. That is the only way, market where you have not motivated. I think motivated is a wrong word to use, because when I use the word motivated, people think it's someone that's desperate. Committed is the right word. You have committed sellers and committed buyers. So we have a workshop. We have a whole day workshop on Saturday the 11th to actually take you through what you need to do to position yourself in the auction space the right way. We tell you about legal packs, what should be in the legal pack. It doesn't matter what you have in there, you need to make sure that you ask for the right documents. So that, again, Archie will share that link with you if you want to come on board. It'd be great. We'll actually offer a discount for everyone that's on today. Then there are a few things that we normally do on our live events, which we're not going to be doing now, with market analysis. So what I'm going to do is this is our standard presentation that we do. I'll just flick through it. But most importantly, we are going to be open for Q&A after the presentations. So please, you can either put your questions in the Q&A. There's a Q&A box. If you look at the bottom of your screen, you can put your questions in the Q&A or put them in the chat, just in case there's someone else that can actually help you answer those questions. So without much further ado, again, when our speakers will come on board, I would introduce them before they come on board, but we've got Aaron Yahaya, who is going to be our second speaker. But before I talk about him, I'm going to talk about Saif, who is our speaker that's just about to take up the stage. Saif, as most of you know him, those of you who come to the Midas evening event, he's done a remarkable, very nice, engaging presentation to us at the evening event on property trading. So anyone that wants to learn how to trade properties, or that wants to know how someone has done extremely well at property trading, should definitely listen to Saif. But today, I think Saif will be speaking a bit about his property trading, but a lot more about how you should actually cope in the current market. But then that said, the current market is only a temporary phase, 1 or 2 weeks. That shouldn't dominate too much of your talk. Just prepare us to be bullish when this all comes up, or once we all get through this phase. Let us know what we need to do to be bullish. So without much further ado, Saif, I'm just going to hand over to you so that you can share your presentation from your end. Okay?
Sure. If you just stop sharing your screen for a second,
okay.
I'll share mine. Great stuff. Right, here we go. Right, thanks for that. Good stuff, Sam, and thanks for having me on. I'll try and keep things as sort of short as possible, I guess, in each different department as I work through it. Obviously, Artie and Sam asked me to prepare a presentation today, and I didn't prepare one because I don't think anyone can prepare one with the way the fast pace movement that COVID-19 is obviously having on the market, the business, and sort of the nature behind what's happening right now in the wider economy. So I just sort of, I've put together a bit of a brief breakdown of what I'm going to be talking about today. And I'll try and go through everything sort of slowly anyway. I think the whole point of this really is try and help businesses get out of this, but I will talk to you a bit about sort of my background and what I've been doing before that. So sort of spent 5 years building a trading company. So we buy and sell quite a lot of properties. We put a lot of properties through auction, as Sam was saying, and we also trade stuff through open market as well. We've got the investment business, so that's SDGB Properties. We've got the trading and development business, which is KDSD. And then the result of that, we had to bolt on a property cash buying business, because the biggest problem in property, as everyone knows, is trying to find the deals. And our business models only work if we can find the deals. The reason people don't like selling properties a lot of the time is because they can't find enough properties to replace them. So that's why we set up Property Buys today as a property cash buying business. We spend probably about £4,000 or £5,000 a month just on marketing on that alone to be able to bring in all the leads, but it obviously pays dividends when we can use that within the investment business and within the trading business. So just prior to all of the COVID-19 situation, we were probably buying around about 6 properties a month on average. We were selling around about 2 or 3 through auction and open market, and we're holding about 3 of them. And then obviously, once COVID-19 came, so this was all the way up until sort of, I'd say, the first week of March. As soon and throughout sort of January, February, March, we saw this Boris bounce happening. So the market started to shift upwards. People started to become a bit more bullish on the property market, and things started to sell way over what they should be selling, especially at auctions as well. So our last property we bought in February. So we bought, I think it was second week of February. The week after that, we put it back into auction. We managed to get 4 times what we paid for it at auction, and it completed literally on the second week of March, thankfully. So that's how fast-paced the market was running back then. Fast forward to now. So I heard about sort of COVID-19 around about in December time, when it sort of hit China, I guess. And then I started to really look at it and look at what impact it can have. So throughout January and February, started to look at it into more detail. And I think towards the end of February, started to look at the business as a whole. So we started to run risk analysis for the business. So we started to look at each individual business. So if you guys have just one business, that's even easier and better, because obviously you can sit and focus on that one business. If you have multiple businesses, you need to break them down individually and start to look at them. So we started to look at risk, basically. And as an example, one of the risks that we identified, so an easy risk for us, was we have a new build project that we're doing at the minute. We've managed to mitigate risk as much as possible before even getting into that deal. But now with the COVID-19 situation, we had a lot of risk. So 2 of the risks, as an example, that we identified on that was, one of them was materials and builders. And the second one was the funding, because obviously we had the development finance on that build. So identified those as risks in a spreadsheet, and then basically tried to put a plan of action into place as to how we can try and mitigate them. As an example, the development risk, we basically picked up the phone to the lender, spoke to the lender, discussed how liquid the business is, how things are doing in general with their business. Things were going fine. We pulled down a tranche, I think it was just end of February. So clearly things are okay with their business, but we're having those close conversations with them. One thing we're not doing is we're not asking them for a mortgage holiday or a lending holiday, only because I think it's not fair on the lenders as well, because ultimately it's going to impact their cash flow and ultimately might impact their business. And that in turn will come back to impact us. So we haven't asked for that. And I don't think, for now, we don't need it. So that was one risk we identified. The second risk we identified within that was, as I said before, sort of the materials and the labour. The labour we didn't really have much of an issue on, because most of them are self-employed, and obviously everyone's looking for work at the minute. So with the self-employed labour, we're okay. We had plenty of people that were willing to work. So just moving on to the materials was the biggest issue. So we started ordering materials back end of February 2020, basically, for this project. So we ordered probably about 8 weeks worth of materials ahead of time. The only problem we had was we couldn't get mortar for the build, basically, because that gets mixed up and it's available every 2 or 3 days. So again, we had to put something in place where we got a hand mixer in place. We got some petrol for the hand mixer, and then we got all the materials as well. So we're all okay with that front. But the point is with that is you need to sit and analyze the risks in your individual business. The other part of the risk that we analyzed was the rental income side of the risk. So we sat down and put a spreadsheet together basically for the rental income. Who's paying the rental income? How diverse are we in terms of the tenant types? And who is it essentially our covenants that are basically sort of paying all of this income? So we realized quite quickly that we have quite a good spread of tenants. So we have social housing tenants, we have social housing leases on properties, we have student tenants, we have professional tenants, and we have some commercial properties. So really diverse in terms of our sort of tenant profile. We quickly started to stress test all of our tenancies and all of our rental income against the DSS rates. So we thought, okay, worst case scenario, Armageddon scenario here, if all the professional tenants left, if the students left, what would we do with those empty properties? We would most likely be trying to get sort of local DSS type tenants in, and the council will be paying for it. Would it still stack up based on that? So that was one thing we did to stress test the portfolio. We had to really dig deep to build relationships. So something that we have a dance studio, basically, a commercial tenant's renting out one of our commercial properties, and it's basically a dance studio. She had to have the dance studio closed for the last couple of weeks because obviously government guidelines. So she had no income coming in. Unfortunately, her partner was also self-employed in the hospitality industry, so he had no income coming in. For me, this is all about the passive income gets blown out of the water when you have something like COVID-19, because everyone needs to really be firefighting. We've been firefighting for the last 2 or 3 weeks, but luckily we had to basically, we helped her. She applied for the grants. We helped her apply for the grants. We talked through it all. She even sent us her bank statements to show us what she's got in the bank. And luckily yesterday she received her grant from the government, and she now paid 6 months up front for rent. So it is doom and gloom if you don't do anything about it. But I think if you can analyze risk, you can build relationships, and you can really basically be quite proactive in trying to preempt any problems from happening, I think it's not as bad as people are making out. Cash flow forecast is another thing that we just went and basically did. So we did a cash flow forecast for the whole business, just to see really where all of our business is at the minute in terms of income and outgoings. So the biggest thing I'd say at the minute with people in property in general, they're not running business as a business. They're just, they're in property, they're buying property, they're selling property, and they're renting property. I think ultimately we've got to look at business as an actual business structure. So we always keep 6 months burn rate in the bank at any time. And that basically means that if we don't get any income for the next 6 months, we've got 6 months worth of overheads to be covered basically by that. So yeah, we ran the cash flow forecast and we're okay. We didn't really need to furlough any staff, to be honest with you, which is fine. But we did have one member of staff leave as a result of her having to go help her partner out. So that reduced our overheads quite a bit, which is not bad. But we did have a lot of things that we were spending money on that we didn't need to. For example, a lot of our marketing budget we cut down as well. So there is lots of different things you can be cutting down at the minute that you don't necessarily need to be paying for. I think a lot of the staff members that have basically been floating about that haven't been optimized will go, and they went first, to be honest with you, especially in the big corporations as well. Looking at the economy as well, so wider economy, local businesses and property businesses. This is quite a broad subject, and obviously this is one that people can interpret in different ways, but this is just my take on it from lots of different research, lots of different articles that I've read and people I've spoken to as well. The wider economies clearly had there's clearly COVID-19 has had an impact internationally and worldwide. A lot of the businesses that were already on the brink of going bust or just were really bad business models that have been floating about for the last couple of years, we're now starting to see become sort of, the victims of COVID-19. So, in the news, people saw things like Laura Ashley going. There's been lots of different businesses that have basically been going into administration. These were, Carluccio's went into administration as well. These businesses were already going to go bust previously anyway. It's just COVID-19 is basically just, being a catalyst to them going bust at the minute. But the point is here, we need to be able to analyze our businesses. How sustainable are our property businesses for the future? If COVID-19 happened again, if a different type of COVID-19 happened again in the future, we all need to sit and analyze things now as well. I think the government, compared to 2007, 2008, are doing quite a lot more to tackle the problem quite early on as well. And I think with regards to the way that the government are tackling it, they're using quantitative easing as a measure. So if you look back to 2007, 2008, the government stepped in too late basically to come in with quantitative easing. Whereas now they're trying to step in, they're trying to introduce lots of various measures. So obviously they're trying to pay 80% of furloughed staff's pay, self-employed staff's pay as well. They'll pay up to 80%. I think it's up to $2,500 as well. So the government are doing quite a lot at the minute to be able to try and prevent the markets from going down. However, the biggest issue that we've had is a lot of the risk-averse people that have basically a portfolio in stocks and a portfolio in shares, as well as a portfolio in bonds, for example, and one's risk-averse than the other, then those are the kinds of things that have been hedged against each other. Those things have been shattered recently. So bonds have gone down and stocks and shares have gone down, and there's no more hedge against what is happening today. So everyone that thought they had a safety net before suddenly doesn't have a safety net anymore. And I think this is making a lot of businesses start to realize basically that they need to review a lot of their business models and try to make sure that they stay as lean as possible. There's been a lot of chat recently about, do you try and grow a big organization and be very stiff, or do you try and have a small organization where you can outsource a lot as well, and use other resources available to you? And at the minute, I think the people that have been able to stay lean as possible, use virtual assistants, use sort of outsourced companies as well, are doing really well. They've been agile enough to be able to pivot out of certain business models. And I think from a perspective just going forward, people really need to start looking at trying to make sure they can bomb-proof their business for the long term as well. I do think that we are going to enter a period of stagnation for the next couple of months. One thing for sure is we've not seen the bottom yet. So, you know, the worst hasn't come yet. And I think we haven't bottomed out. And I think that's going to cause a lot of the wider economy to be even more shocked than it's already been, because the job losses haven't been out yet. And I think the job losses will be in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions. There's certainly been a large amount of businesses affected from this as well. So a lot of businesses can't pay rent. A lot of businesses don't have enough income to sustain as well. So a lot of the high street is shut and probably will remain shut for a good, well, maybe forever really, but definitely a good couple of months. So this all is fringing and depending on how long coronavirus is going to last for. No one knows yet, but yeah, we're certainly thinking months rather than weeks at the minute. What we're doing in our businesses at the minute to try and mitigate this from a property perspective, we've got quite a lot of, we used to have quite a lot of funding lines basically that we're using to buy a lot of these properties quite quickly. The funding lines have all dried up at the minute. So a lot of them have been pulled. So we're having to try to go to different funders to try and recoup those funding lines. The problem that's happening at the minute with most of the funding lines is they've taken them out because the whole logistical chain is broken. So if, for example, Together Finance have pulled out of the market, which are one of the biggest auction lenders in the country, then there's not much funding for auction. So people are going to have to be paying cash. If solicitors aren't all working at full capacity, that means obviously that the some of the legal process isn't working as well. If land registry isn't working at full capacity, and even obviously in Scotland it's closed and there's talks that it might close in the UK, we don't know yet, then and surveyors obviously aren't going out as well. The whole logistical chain is quite broken. So what we're seeing at the minute is people aren't selling properties at the minute. People are trying to hold off for the next couple of months. They are trying to use auctions, and the people that have cash are going to auctions. The issue is obviously with auctions at the minute, people are having to delay transactions. So where people were having 28-day completions at auctions previously, now they realise that funding isn't as easy, funding is a bit more uncertain, so they're delaying completions to, so for example, 56 days, or even we're seeing some up to I think 6 months as well recently. So I think there are going to be loads of opportunities in the market over probably the next couple of weeks, even couple of months. I don't think we've seen the bottom yet, as I've said before, and I think in reality we won't know when the bottom is hit, but I think we need to be able to be in a position where we're highly liquid. If you've got any properties to try it that you're currently going through refinancing, I would probably say it's best to wait and hold out if you can, because the biggest problem that we've got at the minute is a lot of the lenders are using their online desktop valuation model, and they're probably knocking things by at least 10 to 15% of its market value just by doing a desktop valuation. And then the other point is they're doing lower LTVs on the actual properties itself. So on a £100,000 house that where you've added value to, you're trying to refinance out of, you're probably not even going to be taking or covering most of your costs. So your purchase cost plus your refurb costs that you put into it nowadays. So I would say if you can hold off from refinancing, try and hold off from refinancing as much as possible. But obviously, if you're trying to sell likewise, try and run your bridges as long as you can. If you're coming across a bridge that's going to be ending soon, try and preempt. There are some lenders that will do bridging loans, albeit they're going to be at higher rates, but I think they will still be available. But you need to make sure that I would probably pay a bit more finance costs rather than taking the hit on the sale right now, to be totally honest with you. We're trying to be as agile as possible. So one thing that we did, so we had a few empty units that we've just literally finished the refurb on. Obviously, no one's doing viewings at the minute. Tenants aren't really coming out as well. So we contacted a few housing associations locally. We contacted the council locally, and they all said, well, we're not going out to do any viewings. So we just basically said to them, look, we can do the viewings for you. We'll do a virtual tour for you. And lo and behold, to be honest with you, these guys are always living in sort of the past, to be honest with you, and they don't really like technology. But they said, look, we do need properties. There's obviously a homeless situation that's not changing, getting worse with COVID-19 as well. We need to get a lot of people off the streets. Yes, we're happy for you to go do virtual tours for us. So on Monday, basically, we had 3 properties that had just finished from refurbs. We did a virtual tour with the council and some housing associations as well on a video call, kind of similar to this. And they've signed 2 off out of the 3 so far. We've put a key safe up, so we don't need to be in contact with anyone when they're taking over the property. So I think the point is here, we need to be very agile. We need to move quickly. We need to be decisive, and we need to make quick decisions as to how we move out of this. I don't know how many of you, of the people sort of attending today, have non-property related trading businesses, but I'd say now more than ever is the time to have a non-property trading business. Hopefully something that doesn't really correlate with property, even though that's quite difficult at the minute to quantify. But I would say that diversity is really, really key at the minute. So if you do have a non-property trading business, maybe start to look at that more. Is that being affected by COVID-19 as well? If not, then maybe you need to start balancing out property with non-property businesses at the same time. I used to always think property, and this is probably not the best place to be saying it, but I think we need to be balanced between what we're doing in property and what we're doing outside of property as well. Also just looking at, if you have a partner as well, do they have a stable job? Do they have another business? What is the risk overall? So if your partner has quite a stable job, in something that hasn't been as affected by COVID-19, well, that's quite a good hedge against you if you are in business or you are in property as well. But I think now more than ever is the time to be reviewing the risks, reviewing the bigger picture, and also trying to navigate your way through COVID-19 in order to be able to get out of this basically with your head held up high. There are going to be some businesses that are going to get out this even better than when they came into this, but in reality, it's quite difficult to start setting those businesses up from now. If you're in it, you're quite lucky. If you're not, it's not the time to be starting to set those up, I'd say, right now. But maybe in the next couple of months, there's going to be more opportunities. The other thing we're going to be looking at is business opportunities that are coming up. So there's a few letting agents that are really struggling. There's a few estate agents that are really struggling locally that we know. We're keeping close communication with them, close contact with them. And we want to be in a position to be able to buy them out when they are in a position to basically exit the business as well. And obviously now is going to be the best time to be buying a business, because you're going to be buying a business at the bottom of its value, most likely, if you're buying the right businesses. So yeah, we do see quite a lot of opportunities ahead for us in this current climate. And sorry if it seems like it's all been doom and gloom, to be honest with you. I'm just going to take a few. There's been one question here. So Imran's just saying, not entirely true. Even Primark, otherwise super successful, is struggling. I do agree. I think, just reading the second comment, so reason for them, they have no online strategy. Obviously, with everyone is lockout, the need to buy clothes is seriously diminishing. Agreed. So when you look at businesses like Primark, for example, the biggest problem they have is they've obviously been ordering quite a lot of stock, and they design quite a lot of their stuff, and they obviously outsource it to various places like Vietnam, Bangladesh, and those kinds of areas. And they're having to basically get rid of a lot of their backlog of orders that they've got at the minute. But the biggest problem that they've been suffering is a less of a presence on the high street. And I go back to my point that the high street will be changing further than it's already changed. But I think the high street is going to be changing. I also think, I've got about a minute or two left, but I'll just gather my thoughts on COVID-19 and the way we're going to be doing business going forward. I think COVID-19 is going to be remembered for generations to come. I think people are going to be changing their habits, and it's always going to be in the back of people's minds when they're starting a business, when they're in a business, and when they're doing their risk plans in general, or risk analysis plans. However, I do think that people are going to start to become more lean. People are going to use cars probably less. Maybe even people are going to travel less, and people are going to stop using the larger offices less as well, to be honest with you. So I think this whole home working situation is working quite well. Obviously, there are going to still be certain office buildings that are going to be used, but I just think all of these large buildings and corporations might start getting some of their workforce to work from home more. So yeah, that's my 2 pence on everything anyway. And that's it from me for now until the Q&A.
Okay.
Hello, hi Aaron. Well, thank you, sir, for that wonderful bit of information there. What we're going to do, do you want to just stop sharing, please?
Yeah.
Yes, you're sharing. So we can, yes. Okay, great. Okay, thank you. It's been great information, a lot of information to actually process. I know there are quite a lot of questions that are coming through, but I would let Aaron go through so that you can then have a Q&A session together. Aaron, do you, I think,
yeah.
do you want to talk about yourself? You want me to share your profile. Do you have your profile on your screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
please.
I don't have my profile on there. You can share it. You can share about me. Look, Saif, I just need to say I always enjoy listening to you. I forgot I was a panelist for a second because I definitely enjoy the conversation. So
okay, so you go on share your presentation then.
Okay, yeah? let me share screen.
And then while you're sharing, you can tell us about yourself, what you do, who you are.
Okay, let me see if this is sharing. Is it sharing? What can you see?
It is, yeah.
Okay, let me just play from the start. Okay, so so hi, I'm Aaron Yahaya, and let me just see if this works. And the first thing I want to say is that this is a presentation more or less around the mindset, which is key for two things. It's one, being able to have a clear head around this period, and number two, being able to know what exactly your strengths are and where you can pivot to and what exactly you should be doing. Because there are two things that I normally say. One is that everything works, which is the good news. And the second thing I also say is that everything works, which is the bad news, because not everything will work for you. Not everything will work in the current climate. Not everything will work with your resources. So just a bit of a background of myself before I go into the presentation. So I've been in property since 2004, which will make it 15 years. Well, I'm in 2020. See how I've written off 2020 in my mind anyway. So started with a buy-to-let, then I went straight into commercial. No one told me not to do it the other way. So then I owned nightclubs and bars, and I did commercial conversions before I knew commercial conversions was a word. And at the same time, also had other trading businesses. So I'm going to quickly run through some of the stuff in the presentation, but mainly talking about the mindset. And I'll come back and share a bit about where I am. I just want to quickly see if there are any sort of questions in there. Okay, no questions. So I just want to know if everyone's hearing me okay. If you can just give a little wave or a little thumbs up. I can see you safe. Sam, can you hear me? Everyone can hear me. So I want to speak about resilience. And things have changed since I was first going to do this presentation. You might have noticed. And one of the key things that we need to remember is that everything has changed. But the second thing is that actually nothing has changed. Now that sounds, hello, can you hear me, Sam? Now that might be a little bit, might be a little bit confusing, but I want to really have you sit with this. The environment in which we operate is changed, but the fundamentals about what makes a good business hasn't changed. The fundamentals about relationships haven't changed. The fundamentals about clarity, about cash flow, about good business practices. And what we're really finding is, I think it was Warren Buffett that said this, is when the tide goes out, you'll see who's swimming naked. And before I go into the mindset, I just wanted to just briefly touch on the property piece, which will come back in the Q&As. For me personally, I thought we might have a recession this year. When I was looking at it from last year, I was preparing for a recession in Q2, Q3 2020. This was possibly because of what we were going to do, or the effects around Brexit, which were all going to be, driven. So I wasn't really looking. I was looking for us to have a recession this year. And Saif said something which I 100% agree with. This was just a catalyst for the businesses that what I call were Ponziing themselves to stay alive. This was just too much of a shock for them. So that's business-wise, but we'll go into the big stuff and we'll go into the property stuff in the Q&A, and there's some really juicy stuff that I really want to share with you. But for now, I want to speak about you as the individual sat at home, as the person wondering what to do, where to pivot. Now, I will say in the next 10 minutes, I'm not really going to go straight into the tactics of what you should be doing straight away. I'll be happy to cover that in the Q&A, but I want you to actually take this time to reset your mentality, so you're able to not only just survive, but to thrive in this time. So I want to speak about resilience, which is the ability to bounce back. But more than that, it's the ability to bounce back and to thrive. And I want you to use this period where the market has changed, or the atmosphere in which we are operating has changed, to use it as a springboard to move forward, to adjust, to see where you are with the current stuff, and to move forward. So resilience. Now, let me see if I can move the presentation. So I'm just going to skip through these. These are the dictionary definitions of resilience. It's the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, the ability of substance to bring an object back to shape. These are the dictionary definitions. However, I want you to sit with something else, and that is I have, which is 3a times 5m plus 2p equals 17 AMP. Now, I know if you're a maths teacher or you've done any sorts of maths, you'll see that the maths is all wrong here in this formula. I know you can see it, but the news for that is it's my formula. So I make the rules, which is something else which you can be doing in your life. Now, my jokes are always bad, so please hang on with me. This might be the toughest thing about the presentation, the jokes. Laugh at home, and yeah, this is the reason why I never made it as a comedian. And here we go. So resilience was 3a times 5 plus 2 equals 17 AMP. Now, I know you can't hear me, but if you say this after me, this will help you really get into it. So resilience is 3a times 5m plus 2p equals 17 AMP. Now, I'm sure you're pretty confused at what does that mean and how does it relate to me right now. And I'm going to just go through it with you. So if you do have a pen or you do have something to write with, it's okay. You can take the kid off your lap and you can use your pen and do this now. Okay, so this is a few pictures of, you know, where I was pre-COVID times. You know, I spent a lot of time exploring the weather conditions. When I was at university, I actually was an economist by training. That's what I did. I spent a lot of time wearing different things and going out there. This is how I got into my first commercial ventures, which was owning nightclubs and bars. I did decide to venture into different places around the world to do business. So you might recognize this as Rwanda. They had something, they had a bit of disturbance over there. I went over to Nigeria, and I also went over to China. Look, please, I can assure you, it was a different time. I didn't have to be quarantined. I wasn't in Wuhan. I was in a place called Hunan Province. I was in Changsha and Yiwu. All this while, as Saif said, doing alternative businesses. So I was in solar, in agriculture, in ice cream, in kids' clothes. So that's a bit of my business background. But then I decided to settle back in the UK in Sheffield, or God's own country, which is the Republic of Yorkshire. And this is where I started with my businesses. So this is an example of one of the bars that I owned, and we did it from scratch. It was grade 2 listed building. This is the upstairs from another angle. This is another one of the venues. And this is another one of the venues. I'm really skipping through this because I want you to get to the meat of why you're here. But I just wanted to give you a flavor of the sort of stuff that I've done in property. I don't think I've included any residential in this. So these are the kind of things that I do, that I've done with my partners over the years. So very much so around this period, my experience of the commercial units that we have and that we've moved on, I'm really getting some really interesting stuff, which I'll share more in the Q&A than in this. I really want to concentrate on resilience now for us to have a foundation and a base to build on, if that's okay with you. So if that's okay, just say yes. Just type in your little keyboard thing, just say yes if that's okay. We can move on and I can really give you some juice to take forward. So resilience equals 3a times 5m plus 2p equals 17 AMP. So what is this and how does this apply to you right now where you are? So let's start with 3a. 3a is what I call the ACE formula. Now, the worst thing you can do at this period is to, one, think that it's not happening. Number two, not confront it. Number three, put your head under the pillow and shrink away. It actually going to need you to be authentic. So the first thing is authenticity. We're going to be facing challenges both in business and personally. So we need to be authentic about the situation and see it for what it is. Now, the situation as I see it is things have changed and things might still get a lot worse. So, looking at what's going on in terms of capitalization of the market, the best way I've almost described it is at the moment, when you look at the stimulus, which is going on with the Fed in the States, 2 trillion so far, probably another 2 trillion coming, but it's almost probably even a little bit more. So we're looking at going to 130% of GDP. And the reason why I talk about the States is that when the States sneezes, the whole world catches a cold, apart from China, who will probably already be vaccinated for it. But that was supposed to be a joke. But we go on. I need you to be authentic. Authentic about the situation, authentic about where you are, and authentic with the right people, with the right network. So now more than ever is when you actually have a core group of people that you check on in and be available for people to check in with. So this is the first thing about building a resilient mindset. You have to be authentic, because you cannot get a new direction without knowing where you are. Like if your rent percentages have gone down, you know, if you are facing and you're going to have to crystallize some of the losses that you do have, and you're going to have to then do that. But you have to really get a handle on where you are. That's the very first thing, authenticity. The second thing is compounding, is the law of compounding. What I found out about the law of compounding was the law of compounding just works, but it depends on the direction you're facing. So if things are going bad, unfortunately, they're likely to get worse. And if things are going well, there is a high probability they will get better, because practices compound, good things compound. I'll step back into Saif's presentation. There are a lot of practices that he put in, the 6-month cash flow, the ability to be digital, the lean workforce, that are now giving him a compounded speed against the opposition, against his rivals, against his competitors, because they don't even know where to start. So everything compounds. Now, you might have heard the first bit where I said, if things aren't going well right now, they might get worse. Yes, but if you know exactly the direction you're facing by being authentic, then you can change direction and start to compound in the other way. There's going to be great opportunity for those who can take action and take action fast, but you need to be able to know where to take action and what to take action on by being authentic and actually taking stock of your position. So that's the C in the ACE formula. The third thing is excellence in the present. Now, if you have a crystal ball and you can look into the future and tell me exactly how this is going to go, I'll buy it off you, but I'll take an option in it because it'll probably be cheaper. That was another joke, but they're crap. Can I say that? They're not very good, but they will get better. So excellence in the present. This is it. We can do nothing about the past. We can't really live in the future, but we're only available in the present. And being present right now is the best thing you can do. Be present with what you can control. Now, there's a lot of news coming out. There are a lot of reports. There are a lot of speculations. But to be honest, not unless you lived through the 1930s, you might have an idea. This is an unprecedented situation. This is different from 07, 08. There are a few key things which we can discuss in the Q&A. The whole economy contracting at the same time, the amount of stimulus, the bank's balance sheets, the worldwide demand suppression, the restructuring of the economy. There is so much going on, which makes this very, very different. As you can see, let me just share with you. I'm deep in my research. I've been that's Paul Krugman. I'm deep in seeing what president it is, so I'm preparing. So that's been excellent in the present. I wouldn't really recommend Paul Krugman too much. He's got some different views, but hey, I'm adapting with you. Stay present and see where you are, see what resources you have, and double down on what you know. Cut out some of the news sources, cut out the noise, get a summary and say, okay, look, what do I have? Where am I going? And I might not know the future, but I probably know the next step. So I want to really, at this point, also acknowledge all of you for coming on here. I want to acknowledge Midas for putting this on, which is a very much example of this. Instead of sitting back and thinking, what is there to do? You've come onto this webinar to learn something new, to be in the present, to be excellent on the next bit of action. So even taking that action, I want to acknowledge you for. So that is the 3A. Now, the next thing I want you to do, if you do have a pen handy, this advice is for all weathers, is for us to go through the 5 M's of resilience. This is the key backbone with which you can build on in any period, in any climate, to be able to have a resilient mindset. Because we say something like, everything you do is 85% mindset and 15% skill set. And there are various things that allude to that. But without a clear mind, you cannot move with the precision and with the surety that people need. So the very first thing is mastery. Know your stuff. You got to put the work in. And the reason why you do that is you want to move things from you having to consciously think about it to it being conscious. I've forgotten the words for it, but it's one of my mates is a pilot, and the training is to move you from actually thinking about what happens when you actually move the steering or you move the stick. I don't know what it's called. I blatantly don't fly, and but we want to make this automatic. The more things you can make automatic, the less that stress has an effect on you. So for example, I've seen some research that says when you have stress, it actually reduces your IQ by up to 15 or 20 points. I don't know if anyone else has come around that. They say between 15 and 20 now. I don't know about you. There might be some Einsteins in there, but I can't afford my IQ to be down by 20 points, quite literally around this period. So master it. And what I mean by this is whatever you're doing, master it. Now is not the time to go pivoting left and right and looking at different strategies. Master what you're on top of, master what you're doing, master it right now. Now is the time to go deep, because when the world is confused, what they're looking for is they're looking for clarity, they're looking for confidence, they're looking for leaders, they're looking for people who know what they're doing, who have got some assurance. Because at this moment in time, a lot of people are in fear. I'm not going to go too woo-woo on there, and they are looking for something to hold on to. So when they look at a master of your craft, someone who knows what they're talking about, people will gravitate to you. This assurance will also put you at the forefront when we start to recover, whenever in 2024 that might be. So the other two things, that was another joke, by the way. Is anyone actually doing a joke bingo thing? Let's see how many of these terrible jokes I can put through. So the two other things I want to put is having a mastermind, which is what I touched on. So for example, like this, we're all in here, we're sharing information, you're asking questions. Have a mastermind of people you can go to and seek out mentors. Some paid, some coaches. So the almost difference between a mentor and a coach is someone who reflects your own skills, that you ask you questions for you to solve. And a mentor is someone who's probably a little bit further ahead or has got relevant experience. Now more than ever, you need people who have seen stuff. You've seen people, who were there when OPEC raised prices in the 70s, people who lived through the 80s, people who lived through 1987, people who lived through 1990, people who lived through, 2000, around 2000, people lived through, 2008. You see these people, they're like, oh, another one. Oh, great. Interest rates 15%. Oh, wow. Not 15%. This is a great time. It wasn't that bad. People who've lived through some stuff, they're there and they're doing stuff. Now, Sam, I see you moving.
Yeah.
How long do I have?
Yeah, no, thanks. I think I've been sending you quite a lot of messages, but I think you're
right.
too focused on it. You're not looking at your chart. Yeah,
okay, how long do I have?
Way above your time, actually.
Wow. Wow. I was scrolling there. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to quickly summarize in 2 minutes. Okay, that we can take. I haven't seen any of the chats coming through.
No, sorry. I thought as much. You were very focused on delivering the quality.
I know.
Excellent.
So I'll just quickly summarize it.
Okay.
Let me just go to the very end. So your mentality, your memory. Remember who you are. Remember what skills you have. Make sure you move where you are. I can go into this in a whole lot of depth. And you need to keep perspective on everything. Keep perspective and have a purpose. Write a mission statement. Now is the time. Now I'll be able to speak a whole lot more in the Q&As. Let me stop sharing my screen. Will that be? And so Sam can take on the rest of it. So screen share this, and then we'll take it. Thank you for listening.
Yeah. Thank you, Aaron. I can see you're in full flow there. It's quite. I think quite a lot of chats, but I understand. There's one thing that Saif actually mentioned about lending. That one of the biggest player in the auction market is just stop lending. However, it's not every single person that's actually stopped lending on the auction market. We do have a lot of partners that we work with that would do that's still lending, especially the smaller ones. The smaller lenders are still lending. On that note, what I'm going to do is I will quickly bring one of our sponsors to do a 5-minute presentation about lending in this crisis by a smaller company that does a lot of auction lending, just to correct that view, so that you know that all is not lost yet. You can still lend. Kieran, do I have you on? Kieran, can you hear me? Hi, Kieran. I'll put
Hello?
on Kieran's.
Hello?
Yeah,
Hello,
Kieran.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Do you have a video?
I do, yeah. Should be on. Share.
Yeah, can everyone see Kieran? Look, I've got your screen share on, so maybe you can continue. Can you see your presentation, Kieran?
I can see my presentation, yeah. I'm not sure whether my camera is on, but I'm not too sure if you can see me.
Okay, you fire on, and they will try and see why we can't see you. But can everyone, Aaron, can Saif, can you see the presentation?
Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Okay, you can fire on with the presentation. They can find out why we can't see you. Okay, Kieran, you go on. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, no, you're on. So you do a presentation for 5 minutes, and then we can then go to Q&A.
Okay, no problem. 1 moment. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so sorry. Thanks, Sam. So my name's Kieran. I'm a underwriter at a bridging lender called Market Financial Solutions. Basically, just going to tell you how it's affecting us and our industry specifically, but just sort of like adding on to the items and points that were being raised by Aaron and Saif. So this is obviously unprecedented times. We don't really know what's going to happen, and that is also an advantage in some respects, because this is not what happened in 2008. It's not a housing bubble that imploded. Basically, we are, as a globe, experiencing the same items. So there is a positive way to look at this. So we need facts and not fiction. And obviously there's a lot of speculative media out there. Namely, a lot of the people get their information from social media, which isn't necessarily helpful because it isn't actually sort of regulated. It can be just, a lot of fiction. So what we're wanting to do now is just basically, sift through the facts and the fiction. And whilst we know some, we don't know a lot about the COVID-19 impact you can have, but we could certainly speculate with a lot of data from history. So going on from the 2008 situation, I'm old enough to have gone through that myself. It was an economic disaster globally, shall we say, but as I said, it was a housing bubble. This is something that we have not as a nation or even the globe experienced. So we can try and learn from what's happened in the past, and I can certainly tell you what we're experiencing at the moment as a lender. The COVID-19 is impacting the property market, as I'm sure you can imagine. It is, affecting UK home buyers, and it is certainly affecting investment purchases as well, from the buy-to-let perspective. What we're saying and what we're experiencing is that the government, Rishi Sunak, had obviously been offering financial relief to many businesses, investors, consumers, totaling 350 billion. The government's coronavirus package consists of 330 billion in loans. So the way that I would look at this and the way that we're looking at this is that, as opposed to looking at it as all doom and gloom, we need to keep things moving. We need to keep things going. I heard earlier that Together have stopped lending. They've suspended lending. This is true. They are a huge lender. However, in terms of the bridging market, what we're seeing is, we are one of the few lenders that are still going, and we want to keep the economy moving. People are still wanting to buy properties. People are still wanting to carry on with their transactions, and we can certainly assist with that. We're not sort of downplaying the severity of this scenario. However, Boris Johnson and Rishi are clearly seeing that, we need to keep people positive. We need to keep people going. We need to basically have an approach of which is, yeah, it is a pretty terrible situation, but we can't let it, affect everything in a way that is going to be detrimental to the bigger picture. So, he's obviously helped businesses, self-employed to corporations as much as he possibly can. Relief for borrowers, 3-month mortgage payments are being offered, and the Bank of England has lowered its interest rates to 0.10%, which is an all-time historical low. In terms of why we are saying to look at this in as much positive manner as possible is because we can look at previous data. We have seen that in post the 2008 housing bubble recession that caused, it started in America, that basically we've seen that statistics would, sorry, I can't move the slides on. Oh, there we go. Yeah. So we have seen that between the years 2007 and 2017, the market actually rebounded. It got back to where it was. It took some time, but we saw generally an impressive 18% increase of housing prices. So yeah, there was a rough period, but let's keep in mind that was the housing market, and it did bounce back. So this is an opportunity which was also taken by entrepreneurs in that time to invest. And what we're doing is, we are one of the few lenders who still have many valuers who are going out surveying properties. It generally helps if they're vacant. So what we're experiencing is that, bridging is meant to be a fast transaction. It is a fast transaction. How obviously, right now it's slowing down a little bit in terms of like the, time to complete, which everyone is understanding. That being said, we're having a common sense approach with this. So we're having valuers go out. We are not accepting desktop valuations because we don't see them as fit for purpose. And effectively, we have instructed many valuations over the past 2 weeks. Properties have been surveyed and we're on to completion. People don't want to lose their investments because they're looking at the bigger picture. And I truly believe that, the world is coming together, and certainly the UK, to keep this moving. So, bridging is not necessarily something that a lot of clients have necessarily, pursued. However, with auction purchases, it is very, very helpful because you may need the funds and ordinarily need them very, very quickly, which we can do. Every single case that we receive, and we are receiving a lot, it is always bespoke. So we are now, I'm one of the underwriters. Everything is manually underwritten, but we, everything is based on its merits. We want to help people continue to invest. We certainly feel that, as we have valuers going out and as we have, opportunities for people to continue building or starting their portfolio, this is a time to, basically give us a call, give us an email, give us a contact. We're very, very approachable. And I think the main message is that, we can't predict what's going to happen. Nobody can. There are some interesting parallels that can be, drawn from the 2008 crisis. Prices will drop probably, and then they will actually bounce back. The one thing I should mention is that the housing market and property market is a pretty much solid investment. It's not liquid assets. Bricks and mortar will always hold their value. So when you are looking at the sort of like prospects of what you want to do, the stock markets have obviously tanked and such forth, and they will bounce back. It will take time. However, investing in a property is pretty much a good way to look at something that's always going to hold its value. So for us, we're still very much open for business. We are taking a very, common sense approach. We're all working from home now. As I said, we will basically help to, anyone who needs anything and see if we can assist. And, moving forward, hopefully this crisis will be, under control sooner rather than later. But our message is that basically we want to keep things going. You know, it is a scary time. However, this is a global, unprecedented situation which we are all going through, and all nations are doing their best to continue. So, yeah, that's basically my bit. And you know, any questions later, by all means.
Thank you, Kieran. I hope you're going to stay around for the Q&A.
Yeah.
You're the only person I can't see. You haven't got the video sign. I think. How did you join us? By phone or by video?
No, I'm on my laptop. I'm not too sure.
We can't see your video, and that's why you were not sharing your slides. I can see you here, but not your video.
Apologies, I'm not too sure what's happened there.
Yeah, I can't see your video. What about yourself, Aaron? Can you see Kieran's video?
I could see.
Okay, yes.
There it is.
Come on now, yes.
Oh, okay, there we go. At the end of the speech.
Yes. So you've done something different now. Yes, we couldn't see you before. Excellent. Okay. Now, thank you for the brilliant presentation. For letting people know that it's not everyone that stopped lending. Because that was quite an important point to correct. Right now, we're going to move on to the Q&A session. Just while Artie is looking through all the charts, if anyone has a question, can they please raise their hands, and I can get them on to ask the question by themselves. But while that's going through, I'll just ask the panel, what is your view on the current property market right now in terms of transaction levels and the transactions generally? Saif, what's your observation of what's happening right now?
Yeah, so just to go back on the point of Together as well, obviously Together aren't the only lender. There's loads of different lenders out there at the minute. They obviously, quite a big part of the bridging and auction finance market. I spoke to Mark Goldberg, when was it? Friday I spoke to him. So he's the managing director of Together. Basically, they've got £4 billion worth of lending out there, but they've got all sorts of things of pubs, clubs, nightclubs, and lots of hospitality industry type lending out there. So they've obviously got a lot of people asking for mortgage holidays. They've got probably about 2,000 staff members as well. They've got to keep enough cash in the bank to finance that because they've not furloughed them. And they've obviously got to keep enough staff and enough money basically for cash flow in order to basically give mortgage holidays to people. So it's not the fact that they've stopped business because they don't want to lend anymore. It's just the fact that they've put it on pause just so they can sort out internally what's going on until they can go back again. And they're probably going to be coming back into it in the next couple of weeks. We don't know yet, but they are still processing all the applications they've got in the background. So I just thought I'll clarify that. But there is still lots of different options out there. It's just they were one of the biggest guys in the market. But just going back onto your point, I guess now, Sam, I think as Akhil said as well, property is quite illiquid as an asset. So it takes time to filter down. So when you see the stock market plunging quite quickly, it's a very liquid asset. You can sell it and buy it within seconds. Property is not the same case. Also, sentiment with property takes quite a while to kick in. Don't forget, the investment side of the market, it makes up, 10 or 15% of the whole property market in the UK. So actually, we're only operating on quite a small part of the UK property market. So this is one thing I'd say. Imagine when someone takes away the ability of you to do something, it makes you want to do something more and more, and it gives you that urge to want to do it more and more. That's what you've done to people. So you've taken away the ability of them to buy and sell a property, to move into a house, especially according to the government guidelines. They don't want people, they made it very clear, they don't want people moving out or moving in. So I think personally, as soon as we get the deadlock lifted and as soon as we start to have a stepped approach of coming out of isolation, more and more people that have basically been held off for the last couple of months or couple of weeks, or will be held off for the last couple of weeks, are going to want to be coming back into the market. Yes, we're going to see a dip in the short term. So we're going to see some kind of stagnation in the short term, but over sort of, I'd say the next 6 to 12 months, we should start to see things start to rise again. But yeah, I just the long story of this is basic, or the short story of this is we're probably going to see markets, property market maybe go down by as far as 10, 15%, 20% even in the interim as a worst case scenario. This according to Rick surveyors. But I think anyone holding on to some decent properties that can get a decent deal at the time they're buying it shouldn't really have any major issues holding it for the next couple of months, to be honest with you.
Great. Aaron, what are your views on transactions, on current transactions on the market?
Yeah, so what I've actually found is in the space in which I'm operating in, which is the development space, people are taking a much more longer term view. And honestly, so I have a couple of sites that we're offering in, they're actually we're in a bidding process for. I think those who can draw down development finance and are not looking to exit this side of 18 to 36 months, it hasn't actually made that much of a difference, which is quite surprising, because when you look at this over the longer term, this will be seen as a bit of a dip. Now, it's a bit different for people looking to exit sites, but I'm not in there. My experience, yeah, the overall volume level will go down, but I just do think that we had a Boris bounce, because we actually almost had a forerunner to this, a much lighter way, pre-Brexit, when transaction volume sort of slowed a little bit and some deals were being stretched out a little bit to see what will happen when we were having the pantomime in Westminster. And we're almost in that situation a bit now where people are like, yeah, the fundamentals are still there. The business is still good. The things that were bad are still bad. We're having a period, and even when we bounce back, there's going to be restructuring around employment and jobs. But for now, what I'm finding is it's still business as usual for a certain segment of the market. So there are only just one or two things that I'm finding that are now starting to come up, is people revising their offers for stuff that, we're selling, the unknowns around labor costs. Okay. And, there is always even now a stronger preference for cash, because property, it's an illiquid asset, and that will be there. So that's what I'm personally finding. I don't know if anyone else can identify with.
Yes, we talked about transactions within, which is more like the buying and selling, what's going through. I know you both are property developers. I was going to ask a follow-on question on property development specifically, but before I do that, Lucy, can you come in with your question so that I can come back and ask about the effect of the supply chain, just so that Saif and Aaron, you can the supply chain. Okay, go on, Lucy.
Okay, my question, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, my question is that I know Kieran already said it, they are lenders. I'm just wondering, so that means that it's the best time to kind of like invest, because my point is that I wanted to invest. So so that means that it's the best time for now, as all are talking, it's the best time now to, if you want to invest in terms of property, let's say buying. So I shouldn't be scared to jump in and just buy.
Okay, Lucy, thanks. That's a great question. I've been running events for the last 7 years. There's one quote that almost every speaker always has on that slide. They say, it's a popular Warren Buffett quote that says, when others are scared, be bullish. I think it's quite easy to cut and paste, and everyone does to a large extent. So right now, who is going to practice that? Who is going to be bullish? Is this the best time to be bullish? That's Lucy's question. So Kieran, let us know, is this the best time to be bullish, to invest? Are you willing to lend a lot?
Yeah, we're 100% willing to lend, Lucy. So to answer your question, I can't advise what you should and shouldn't do. However, people, I mean, entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, including, not even Warren Buffett, like he's monumental. Taking risks, it does have, some consequences. However, the rewards could be huge. So I'm not going to, in any shape or form, say, yes, you should invest, or you should, now is the time. However, I don't see why if you feel like you have a good opportunity, why you wouldn't. We're still lending. And as I said, this is not a situation the world has ever encountered before. We don't have any way to gauge how it's going to go, other than the fact that the housing market is something that will bounce back. As I said, it's a tangible asset. It's something that is going to always be required. We will always need houses. It's about supply and demand. So, if you are, thinking about invest, because one thing I should mention is that we are unregulated. So we only do investment properties. We don't deal with people's homes. So the risk for us is that, together may or may not have suspended some lending, but we are very much in the market to still assist people with purchasing investment properties. It's the big picture. It's a long game. It's not a short game.
Excellent.
So I wouldn't be scared.
Kieran?
I wouldn't be scared.
Thanks, Kieran. So, Saif and Aaron, can you just have a quick sort of 30 seconds bite on, is this a time to invest? What is your advice on transactions investing now?
So in a nutshell, I would buy and sell anything at any point, as long as it's at the right price. That's about it.
Okay, Aaron?
I agree. The fundamentals are the fundamentals. So as long as the price, and this is a long-term game. So even if it's a 2-3 year shot, depends on your strategy, but I would say the fundamentals are the fundamentals if they add up to it.
Okay, just from a facilitator's point of view, as someone that does disposals and acquisitions, I think now is the time to actually invest, in the sense that most of the sellers that we have on board now are far more flexible in terms of the sales terms. Because I think at times, I absolutely hate that word below market value, because I think why should anyone sell their property below market value? However, at times, terms of sales can be a lot more beneficial than a small discount of £5,000. Right now, most sellers, especially people that don't need the money immediately, I'm negotiating something for a client out of an auction company. It's a probate. The family doesn't need the money. In fact, they're on a cruise right now and being quarantined, but they are willing to give a 6 months completion with access to get your work done. If you don't buy that now, when are you going to get these kind of terms again? So I think when people are buying, they should be looking at the opportunity now, not just to look at price, but to get more favorable terms. And I keep saying terms because everyone gets trained about below market value. Now to the questions I've got for you two gentlemen. Development work. I know most development sites are not shut down yet, but what has been the impact of the supply chain? On the development side, you have to buy building materials, you need to get a few things sent to you on site. How is that impacting developments? And you might want to mention about planning as well. Is there an issue with the planning offices? Are they all working? So if you can deal with development in a holistic way, look at the planning issue, look at the value chain in terms of supply of building materials and labor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in terms of materials, yes, you're right that there is obviously a supply chain issue with materials. A lot of the large merchants are now closed. The only reason they've closed is because the large house builders have all closed as well, to be fair. So that's probably one of the reasons that they've closed. But I think in general, there's a lot of little, smaller outfits that are still open. You can still buy things from. I also think you can also buy things from other people's building sites that have gone bust. So there are some people that have not managed to get out of this basically and basically closed a lot of their building sites that need the cash. You can obviously look to reach out to them and basically try and buy some of their materials that they've got on site that frankly at the minute they're not really using. So that's one of the things. I guess in terms of supply chain in general though, across the board logistically, we're having to do Zoom calls like this with the council, we're having to do Zoom calls like this with sort of the building regs guys and the planning consultants and everything else. We're just having to adapt. I think they're having to adapt as well. So yeah, logistically, we've not really got major issues apart from the material supply chain, which there are some solutions for. So that's my part on that. Okay,
Aaron, what's your view on that?
Yeah, the issue that we have found, there are a couple of things is, okay, the people that are looking to buy, but the problem we have is in terms of some of the tenders that are coming back, that are a little bit, what they were quoted on, even though some of this was baked in because we started to have some of these issues actually started to pop up last year when we started to have the uncertainty around the B word, Brexit. Some of these issues are lighter touch. So it was in terms of labor costs and in terms of material costs for some of the projects that we're doing. Now, the other thing that also happened last year is a lot of actually building firms went bust and, overcommitted, couldn't quite manage the cash flow. So again, there is some excess and surplus bits of stock from here and there floating around. And I do think that this might be a little bit of a challenge in terms of securing the right tender. And that's what, you know, where I've come back, you know, there are a couple of conversations I had. Now, planning, we put something in for planning, amended the planning 2 weeks ago. We've done the pre-apps. It was all going. And what the council I'm dealing with on this one is a particularly ancient council. So their communication has been down, but I'll update you how that goes. So what we're finding is there's an inconsistency as to how willing particular planning officers are and particular departments are, depending on resource, to be able to move forward with the technology. But again, taking the long-term view, when you look at what Kieran was saying, that the housing, the supply and demand, the fundamentals are the fundamentals, and you might just have to stretch out in terms of your cash flow forecast and in terms of adjusting your profit to take into account this period. That's what we're finding, but people are still buying. Just, you know, they want to live.
Okay. That's fair enough. Okay, I've got Khalid. I've got someone here waiting to ask a question. Khalid, let me unmute you so you can Khalid, can you get on with the question? Okay, while he's trying to unmute himself. Yeah,
I think
okay.
there's questions as well, Sam.
Yeah, Khalid, can you?
Yes. Hi,
yes.
Sam. Hi.
Yeah, what's your question?
Yeah. Yes. It will be similar to the previous question, but I will not ask you guys about investing is the right time to invest or not. At the moment, I'm in transactions and I'm supposed to exchange and complete. But my worries is that if I did complete it and bought this property, I would be struggling to rent it for the next, I don't know, 6 months or something, because now the other properties now, they have tenants running away. Some of them, they moved out. Some of them not paying rent. So the rental market is not that great at the moment. So my worries is that, or even though if I get it with the right price, as Saif said, how can I get to rent it? That's my worries at the moment.
Can you delay the completion?
I didn't exchange yet, so that's why. I don't know. Maybe I can request that, but for how long? Nobody knows.
Yeah. So I would probably look at an exchange with delayed completion. Obviously, this all depends on what the circumstances are of the vendor. Because if the vendor's really desperate for whatever reason, needs the money today, then they're either going to have to take a haircut on the price of the property, which you will factor in the empty rental for the next couple of months. Or the other point is, if they're not so desperate to sell and they want to still get that same price that you're paying for it, they've got to factor in the a delayed completion, basically. So there's a couple of things you could do. You can option it, so you can put an option agreement on it, and then the option can be basically to buy it within 6 months, as an example. Or the other thing is you could do exchange with the delayed completion, but I certainly wouldn't be looking to complete on it right now if you can't rent it out and if you're not getting the right discount for it as well.
Okay, so in this case, what I'm getting from you, I'll have two options: either delayed completion, or I negotiate more the price just to cover up my void time of not rental. Yeah,
so I'll probably look at a worst case 6 months void period and just basically factor that into your costs.
I think, yeah, thanks. I think that the key operative word there is you have to find out from the vendors what is our situation. Are they living in the property? Is there a cost to them? Delaying completion by 6 months? Do they, like the example that I just mentioned that I'm negotiating right now, it's a probate. It's been vacant for ages. It's a well-to-do family. They don't need the money, but they want certainty of sale. So I think the situation might be slightly different. You just need to make sure you find out exactly what is their situation. Okay, then there's a question here. It could be a remark, but we can make a question out of it. I reckon if we manage to restart the economy in 2 months, then we'll bounce back. However, if we go into a shutdown for 6 months, then the recession is almost guaranteed, and it will take 2 to 3 years to recover. What is your view on that? What do you think? How long do you predict the shutdown to be for? Is there any kind of, do you guys have any prediction how long you think the shutdown might be for?
I don't think anyone can answer that question, to be totally honest with you. I think it's a really, really difficult question to answer. I think ultimately we can't model our model on China because China's gone through a totally different thing than what we're going through. Whether you want to believe there's 2 strains out there, I don't know. But I think we can't really model on anyone at the minute. When you look at our curves at the minute, so I've been analysing all the different curves over the last sort of couple of days. You know, ours and Spain's and Italy's is totally different than Asia. You know, Asia's had a different response rate to the way that we're responding to this. I think ultimately the biggest problem that we're going to have is, are people going to just, so if we lifted the deadlock tomorrow, are people just going to get out their homes and go back to business as usual? No, they're not. You know, you're going to have people that are going to still be staying at home. You're going to have people that are very fearful. As Aaron said, you're going to have people that probably are going to still have mental health issues as a result of this as well, because people are locked up inside their homes ultimately. So I don't think it's going to be weeks, I'll be honest with you. I think it's going to be months. I don't think it's going to be years. So hopefully that helps. But yeah, I'll probably see the lockdown lifted maybe towards maybe around June time, June time in total reality. But it's not going to be a straight lift. It's going to be a stepped approach into bringing people back into society.
Okay. Kieran, what do you have any crystal balls with you?
If only. I would pretty much concur with that. I personally think it will be about 2 months. So 3 weeks. So this is the second week. I think Boris will announce that it will be at least another 3 weeks. My best friend lives in Italy, and he's on day 23 now. And they've peaked, and they're going back down now. So. And my partner's from Spain, and so I've got 2 examples of people who are actually living there, and they're saying that, you know, it is scary. It won't be 6 months, no way. I know it may be selfish, but I just cannot see the government allowing the economy to tank if it goes on longer than 3 months. Don't really know. It's possible to say, but I personally think it'll be 2 months. Adding on to what Saif and Aaron was saying, I think it will have affected a lot of people in different ways. One thing I have actually experienced from a lot of brokers, and what they're saying is that a lot of people, which is absolutely true, will no longer necessarily have offices. They'll work from home because they can work from home and it's working. So, you know, our productivity and other people's productivity differs, but I think that overheads will be serious considerations for companies going forward. So I think it's going to change the world in a lot of ways. 2 months, I reckon 2 months. That's what I think.
Okay. Well, the person that definitely has a crystal ball in central London.
I'm actually tending towards. I'm tending towards restrictions, probably towards September time overall, in terms of loosening, because it's going to be the same way it's still got to ratchet up. I think we've got 2 other levels to go. I think we're also going to ratchet down. And then there is going to actually be the lag and the shock in terms of the reprogramming of people's behaviors. So I actually really think I'm actually looking at Q2 2021 for us to actually have the full impact of this and where we're going. We still have, you know, the liquidity to seep into the market. We still have what's changed when people reassess the businesses that have gone out, what's going to be going on local value, what's going to be happening to rents, what's going to be happening with councils coming more into the market, more the social housing, what's happening with benefits. I think Q2 2021 is what I'm looking at, where we'll actually be able to take stock, which is when you put the political and the economic and the lag and the mental and the human. I think Q2 2021 is telling that the legislation, the coronavirus bill, actually sunset in 2022. So March 2022. So this is when in the background, they're still going to be expected to need the powers and be dealing with the powers around this. So I do think that the best thing people can do is assume that this is the way the world is going to be and find a way to thrive in it, which will also make you resilient for when it resumes through it. If you keep just I'll quickly touch on this. People actually say that actually people are grieving at the moment, and if you look at the stages of grief, because of the world that was, the lifestyles, the dinners, the Cheetos they can no longer get from the shop, all that kind of stuff is really feeding into what people are thinking. So I would say, look, prepare for the worst, which is we're not going to have our semblance of normality till Q2 2021, which is probably in, but also but prepare for the worst, hope for the best. That's exactly where you need to be.
Okay, great. Thanks. Just looking at the comments field here, I've seen Brendan Quinn just said National Express says from Sunday evening there will be a suspension of coach services. So that is probably just on that note, on the government announcement, breaking news announcement. I know we this is optional. If you know, do you have a brief summary of what the government intends to do for businesses that you can actually give to us in about, say, 90 seconds to say, there are quite a lot of payments for self-employed, 80%. Has any of you got a brief summary to actually just give us for about 90 seconds of what we can expect as businesses as support?
I think there's quite a lot on the government website, to be honest with you, Sam.
Okay.
But just
I know it's changing quite often. It changes almost every day, actually. So yeah.
What I will say is, though, one thing to be careful about as well. So a lot of this stuff you've got to be reading. So a lot of what's happening is people are going out on BBC saying X, Y, and Z, but then people are just taking that at face value. But the problem is the devil's always in the detail. If you sit and look at the detail of what gets released. So as an example, you've got the business interruption loans that are being released by all the banks, right? So the government are writing up to 80% of that. They're basically guaranteeing 80% of those loans. And also you get 12 months free, interest-free loans. The problem is what happens when you go over the 12 months, you revert back to their rates, and their rates can be something as high as 17% on an APR basis from someone like Barclays, for example. So stuff like that, you've got to be careful because you're going to get caught out on it as well. Although today the government have come back and said, look, we want these loans to be faster, cheaper, and basically more certain, I guess, for people. But just in general, make sure that you read up around, what are the implications of doing these things. The grants are really good. So grants for small businesses are really good. You've got £10,000 for small businesses that have rates relief. Anyone, I think, that pays between 15 to 50,000 in sort of certain sectors gets up to £25,000 grant. You'd have to pay that back. That's really good for small businesses. You've got various things like, obviously, a lot of people are starting to look at the furlough schemes. The furlough schemes are quite interesting. The problem with the furlough schemes are there's a set time until when they kick in. And as a business, you still need to pay your staff members and then claim that back as well. So I think the employed one kicks in end of this month. Self-employed kicks in sort of in June, but you can backdate it about 3 months. And obviously you need to look at your position. Are you self-employed? Are you employed? Most people, I'm assuming here, are probably going to be self-employed. If you are self-employed, then do you pay yourself a salary? If you pay yourself a salary, you can furlough yourself. Or if you are self-employed, completely pay yourself a salary, for example, you might be taking a small salary and some dividends, or just dividends alone, whatever. Then dividends don't really count, and rental income doesn't really count on the furlough scheme. So yeah, there's a lot of exclusions from a lot of the grants and business interruption loans and everything else. But I think in general, people just need to look at the government website. It's quite clear what they are offering, and just basically work out what works for you.
Okay, and I think the key thing as well is to speak to your accountant. Like you say, your accountant will know the best scheme for yourself. I guess most accountants now are actually getting themselves educated. Just again, I would say about 10 minutes to 1, we can actually, we'll switch on to the auction company's website, because Network Auction, who are our partner and sponsor for this event, their auction starts at 10 minutes to 1. The first lot that's been offered, it's a very interesting lot in South London, which we expect a lot of interest on that lot. And just on the auction front, most auction companies have gone virtual as well. Some companies are doing what is a simulation of a real auction, like Auction House did last week, where you actually had Andrew Binstock shouting down, as though if you looked on Facebook, it doesn't, you had a feeling that there's a live auction taking place. And then other auction companies, they've got a mix where they've got people just taking phone calls and there's no auctioneer right in front of you. But what Network Auction has done, they've taken a whole, what I call an eBay option. So you can actually bid by yourself at home on your laptop or on your phone, almost as an eBay acquisition. Is there anyone here that's actually bidding on any lot this afternoon? Is there anyone online? Just show your hand and let's see if by show of hand, is there anyone bidding today? Anyone buying today? Anyone selling? we've got quite a few properties that we're selling. So I was hoping that one of you is actually buying one of our stock, but yeah, okay, there you go. That's for next time. In terms of questions for the panel, going on, let me look at any questions. Have you guys, is there any interesting question in the comments field? Or do you want
I had a quick look. Sorry, I had to log off and come back again. So I think I may have missed one or two of the questions because I can't see all the chats now. But really good questions so far and amazing feedback as well. Just trying to go back. I think you've answered the one from Imran Sheikh.
Okay.
About
actually, while you're looking at that, I can ask one from. I've got quite a few questions on the list. Just the panel. I mean, of course, while RT is looking through the charts, how do you think this will affect investment funds, especially both residential and commercial? Because I think right now everyone looks at the individual buyer and seller. How is this actually affecting investment funds? I don't know who wants to have a go first. Aaron?
Sorry, Sam, could you just quickly repeat that question?
I think right now everyone seems to look at this a lot more from the point of view of an individual buying and selling. But how is the current situation actually affecting investment funds, especially residential or indeed commercial residential funds? Are we having a lot of problems on the bigger investment funds?
I think so.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, I do think that it's. I mean, you've got to look at the likes of Into, quite a big shopping mall at the minute. They've been massively. I mean, Into already on the brick. They're just very highly leveraged in general, but they've only been paid 35% of their rents. That's a big hit when you're already drowning as a business and you're already sort of very illiquid as a business. So. Yeah, I think property funds are looking for sustainability. So they're looking for small returns over the long term. That's most property funds. So they're looking for strong covenants. The problem is when you look at covenants today, something like Debenhams, for example. So Debenhams basically was a great covenant 10 years ago. So when you had Debenhams, you might be buying those kinds of commercial assets at, I don't know, say 4% or 5% yields as an example. Whereas today, Debenhams is filed for CVA, so they don't actually want to be paying any of their rent, so they want to reduce their rents down. So Debenhams is no longer a strong covenant. Similarly, we saw a lot of funds going into the student space as well. So a lot of student properties have been bought up by these funds because it was slow, steady, and decent sort of sustainable income. Today, we don't see that. Students are basically going on strike now. They're trying to get refunds for a lot of their rent because they're having to go home and they're doing e-learning. So covenants are changing, funds are not changing. What funds are going to change is who they value as a covenant and how they value their covenants as well. So yeah, funds are going to start looking at covenants in very different ways. I think the covenants that really have, 10x'd overnight is basically covenants like social housing charities, DSS tenants. That's basically underwritten by the government. So the government are paying for that directly. Those are the guys that won't hopefully ever be going bust. And they're the strongest covenants today. So we've seen things like assisted living properties, social housing properties, housing association properties, where they've leased out properties on a residential basis for 5, 10, 15 years. That's gone up massively. And we've seen a massive amount of demand increase from a funds perspective. So they're changing the covenants and they're changing the asset types that they're going for. But in terms of as a fund, they're still very liquid and they've still got decent amounts of money in the market to spend.
Okay. Aaron, any views on that? The commercial space?
Well, to be honest, I think Saif's actually been comprehensive in terms of covering it. We start to actually see a few ones. We saw the property funds a little bit earlier, very early in the process. Some of the funds started to, suspend, and everything's kind of changed. It's on its head, and we're going to really actually see, in terms of some of the businesses and the strength of the covenants and the viability of them moving forward, and what this new structure is going to look like, and what exactly the value of some of these previously strong companies once they come out of this. So I'd be very interested to see what happens more or less in the industrial space and how a lot of the big players are going to be moving to adjust to the new economy. So there's something Kieran touched on in terms of what's actually going to happen. So I know a few people who work for a couple of the big firms like CBRE and JLL, and they're also looking at some of the big offices that they have and some of the big outlays that they do have. So this is going to be a very, very interesting time, and let's really see what happens in terms of the shakedown. I'm going to call it the Saif Derzi shakedown, the Saif shakedown. That's what I'm going to, that's what exactly what I'm going to name it through this period. So let's see what happens in the Saif shakedown.
Okay. Looking at this, I know, Saif, you have your hands in quite a few powers, which is quite good in the property industry. You have, you're more on quite a lot of the chain. Zoopla versus Rightmove. There have been so much, especially Rightmove has been very untouchable, very arrogant, as at times some might say. We've got a couple of estate agents locked in. I know when this all started, I think Zoopla and Rightmove offered a 25% discount for 3 months, and that was the offer. But suddenly, I hear thousands of estate agents were delisted. They suddenly had to up that offer. I don't know, is any of you familiar with what's happening in that space between Zoopla, Rightmove? I know, do you want to comment about that at all?
Yeah. So we talked about agility to begin with, and obviously agility is being able to move with speed very, very quickly as the market's starting to change. Rightmove was the king of all portals to begin with, but they're very, very expensive. And as soon as the crisis hit, basically people didn't really want to be paying to Rightmove what they were paying because they're trying to reduce overheads as a business. Zoopla stepped in, like you said, straight away, and then obviously offered people quite a long period of using the portal for free. And basically as a result of that, they had to basically stop their Rightmove use. So we saw a lot of people changing from Rightmove to Zoopla. And I think personally, this is like the change from eBay to Amazon. I think eventually Rightmove is going to become the eBay, and basically Zoopla is basically going to become the Amazon. So it's going to become the new largest portal. So that's just my take on it.
Okay. Anyone else for a comment?
Yeah. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Sam. Yeah. I'll start by saying thanks to Aaron and Kieran for your presentations. Really, really good. In response to what Saif was saying, I totally agree with him. As a developer, I developed a valapp.io. We have to query some APIs from these online estate agents, and Rightmove is just such a pain. They're not letting anything happen. But Zoopla has made it easy for us to get information. And as you can imagine, a lot more people write apps. And if Zoopla provides you that information, you just write your stuff around what's available. So it'll be similar to what happened between BlackBerry and iPhones, right? iPhone gave us the ecosystem, we wrote apps, and suddenly BlackBerry died. And if Rightmove doesn't change, they would go the same way of the BlackBerry, I think. So Zoopla is doing the right thing. Rightmove needs to look at what they're doing. Now, my question to Kieran and Saif is, we provide some valuations for investors. And right now, a lot of what we're doing is based on comparables. From your experience, what sort of discounts do you apply to comparables and sold prices when you receive them from valuers and stuff? That one to Kieran. And Saif, what discounts do you apply to products that you want to purchase? Thanks, guys.
Okay,
For me to go first, yeah. I think it's difficult to determine discounts right now, but because a lot of this you've got to remember hasn't actually filtered down into the system. So transactions have been halted. So when you look at the last 3 months land reg data, for example, you probably won't see much for the last necessarily couple of weeks, but before that you'll see the normal numbers. I would probably, depending on how risk averse you want to be, I'll probably be factoring in 20% reduction on a worst case scenario and 10% on a best case scenario, and anything in between. It just depends on how much of a deal it is today in this climate. So even obviously on the back of a couple of auctions that we've seen recently, there've still been quite a lot of lots that have sold at the reasonable prices and even way over guide price. So people are still in the market. You know, don't get that wrong. People are still in the market for properties. So yes, it's difficult to get 20% discount today, but if you want to be as risk averse as possible, you need to be looking at that. If you're thinking, well, actually, I want to take a bit of a chance and I don't really want to try and push my luck too much, I can ask for a 10% discount, then that's probably your best case scenario. So I'll probably say 10 to 20% is where I'd want to position it personally.
Okay.
Yeah. So so just to clarify, do you mean that when a valuation report has been conducted, you're saying that the comparables, what the current lenders are providing as a discount? Sorry, I didn't quite catch the beginning of the sound cut out. Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah. So generally, valuers their figures would be based on comparables, so historical evidence. But right now, you can't really go on historical evidence because we're in a completely different time. And what tends to happen is they would either put a disclaimer or they would discount the price, and then it will come to you as an underwriter and you take a view on it. So I'm just trying to understand what your view would be on some valuation you received from a valuer, or assuming they've sent you something based on the historical evidence.
Yeah, I would pretty much concur with Saif. I'd say that I would allow a contingency of between 15 and 20, reduction. Personally, the cases that I've seen so far, I mean, we've had valuations go out last week and this week. I'm still waiting on the reports. But for example, I have a report for one case which was done the middle part, just before we went on lockdown, and effectively there was already a contingency built into that when it was about, I think it was about 8% in it. So I would allow up to 20%. Yeah, that's what I would say as well. I think that's a worst case scenario, as Saif said.
Okay. Thanks, gents.
Aaron, any take at all on that?
It's spot on. So I think 20% is where things are at the moment. I am conscious of the time for once.
Okay. Okay. So let me Ati, any questions at all from Okay, I'm just looking through. There are quite a few questions in the chat. Let me see. Gents, just let me know if you've seen any that you think is worth looking into, that we can actually okay, so let's see. Okay, let me if I'm just trying to look through that. If not, social housing. I mean, not so long ago, most HMOs were professional led. Do you see this crisis actually pushing a lot of people into social housing? Just what's your take on that? Do you think a lot more lenders or investors would look more favorable at social housing this moment in time going forward as well? Aaron, do you want to start?
The word to that is absolutely, and the stuff that I started to pivot towards social housing actually just over a year and a half ago. I do actually think there is something about the long deals that you could do. So we're obviously looking to develop it, go to work with an RSL housing association. Those are the kind of deals that we're discussing now. I do actually think that other people who are actually buying and who are looking to dispose actively as councils, it's still open for business in government. They're still open for business. They've got cash. They're still rolling forward. And I do actually think that as a model, the assurances, and also where affordability is going to be once the economy is restructured, I do actually think that this is something to be looked at seriously. And that's what I'll summarize in there. Saif, I know you work with AJ, and I'm sure you want to come in next and comment on this as well.
I think just, obviously I said this before, but it's just the value of that as a covenant has just gone up because people are realizing that this is the safe haven of property investing, to be totally honest with you. Commercial property was quite a safe haven before, but that, the high street's been disrupted massively, different industries and sectors have been disrupted massively, and the high street no longer is the safe haven. And we've seen certainly loads of funds, so there's lots of property funds that have gone into this space as well. So they're buying up large amounts of sites where basically they'll fund it and they'll have a housing association just basically lease it out at the back end as well. And I think investors are going to follow suit as well. And I think there's already loads of investors in this space, to be honest with you. We get loads of investors come to us asking us to find them a property, use our contacts to put a lease on it for them as well, and then obviously just manage any ongoing maintenance if there is any maintenance. And we've definitely seen quite a large amount of more people coming to us for this at the minute. So yeah, I would say that is the next safe haven for people to be looking into.
Okay, Kieran, I know quite a few lenders in the past have not been very keen to lend to people who have maybe social housing tenants. Do you think that will change going forward?
The short answer is yes. The long answer is, I mean, we can't tell. But as both Aaron and Saif said, I mean, yeah, it's about supply and demand, and it's all about risk as well. I think that fundamentally, you know, I think the landscape's going to change a lot, and I think that it is about, you know, looking at the sort of safer sort of like avenues to pursue. I think it will. I think it will for a certain number of lenders, and I would imagine quite a few high street as well, and other sort of criteria changes will absolutely, you know, be implemented. I think it will. I think that investors as well will be very much inclined to, for part of their portfolio, for example, you know, pursue that as you know, a large part of their ratio, because it's you know, it's not safer, but you know what I mean, like it's all about, you know, risk. And I think that it certainly will be something that, you know, like I said, we nobody knows what's going to happen, but you know, social housing is something that is, you know, always needed, and it is about supply and demand. And I think if investors want to, you know, make sure their assets are secure, they will actually, you know, tend to sway that way if at all possible.
Then Kieran, while you got the mic, just for the benefit of the attendees, when we hear about more interest rates being reduced to quite low right now, how does that actually trickle down to you as a lender? Do you kind of like, as soon as you hear that, do you change it immediately? Does it take a while for you to change it? What are the steps? What is the actual situation on the ground once we hear the soundbite on BBC that interest rates have been reduced? How long does it take for you to implement it?
Pretty much immediately. So we're not actually affected by the Bank of England, you know, reducing it to 0.10. That doesn't affect us because we don't do term facilities, but it will obviously affect exits. So people who are on fixed mortgages obviously won't affect, but on trackers, yeah, it certainly will. So what we're experiencing is that the exit of the bridges who want to go into buy-to-let refinance, for example, finding it obviously a little bit more difficult currently. So they may want to, you know, delay on completion, as Saif was talking about earlier. So for us, it was an immediate thing, because we have, the way that our business is structured is we have several funding lines. So we have private investors, and we have, you know, various different avenues of funding. So we have to obviously keep their interests at the forefront as well, because yeah, effectively it's their capital that they are looking to use. So we, I think, I mean, over the past 2 weeks, a lot of bridging lenders have suspended funding. So what that means is they'll continue with their existing cases, but not take on new cases. Some have completely stopped, not all, and we are seeing a bounce back from that. Incidentally, what that's done for us is obviously it means that we have to be very, very, like, every single case is always manually underwritten. However, every single case now that is sent to the credit committee is very much assessed purely on, you know, our criteria that we look at in a much more stringent manner. So it was immediate. Can't speak for obviously you know, your traditional lenders. However, it does affect us for the exit of facilities. But it, like I said, there is a positive spin on this, you know, because people will take advantage of the fact that the interest has been reduced to a historical low. What, you know, once everything starts to get back to normality, you know, before I said it'd be about 2 months, I think it'll be 2 months of a lockdown. I think it's going to take a while for things to get back to where it was. However, you know, only time will tell.
Okay, just keeping my one eye on the auction to see when it starts, so we can switch and then follow it up. Just so that we're actually trying to round down or round up. Saif, do you have any summary of you know, what are the nuggets? What advice can you give our attendees today?
I tried to throw a lot of bullets out there, to be fair. So hopefully, you know, the guys caught on to quite a lot of what I was saying. I do tend to speak quite quickly and don't tend to sort of sugarcoat a lot of the stuff. So hopefully people got through my message, which the message is quite simple, really. The message is take this time to analyze, take this time to think, start planning ahead of time, and basically just really review everything at the minute, because the biggest problem that I see that the people try and do is they just try and add and add and add and do more and more and more. But the biggest point is here, less is more sometimes, and trying to focus on one thing rather than doing loads of different things is actually not a bad thing, especially in this climate. I would be as highly geared as possible, but also as highly liquid as possible right now. So the biggest problem is a lot of people are very highly geared but not very liquid, and that's where problems start to happen. If you're highly geared but highly liquid, you're very, very agile and you can start to move really, really quickly. So that's the position I would want to be in right now, is highly liquid and highly geared as well.
Excellent. Aaron?
So actually, my first thing was actually, you know, stay liquid, which is the reverse of what Saif was actually saying. Stay liquid, stay sane, you got to think long term, don't be a hero. You know, don't be a hero. Just the fundamentals are the fundamentals. Stay liquid, think long term, structure properly, which is taking into account risk. So it's almost exactly the same, Saif. We're like twins.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, which is fantastic. So, like Warren Buffett says, again, and like I said, almost everyone is always quoted that quote of his saying, when people are scared, you have to be bullish. This is the time to actually put that to test. And like I said before, this crisis that we have is quite unique in the sense that it affects almost everyone in the world. It affects the whole value chain. Like you were saying about supply of material. We've actually looked at it from the UK perspective as from the shop to the site, but this could be from the factory in Poland. It could be from a dress manufacturer in Bangladesh. The whole world is in lockdown. So we can solve the problem in the UK and we're fine, but then the problem persists somewhere else, and that could still affect what happens in the UK. So I think, again, just to sum up, again, as you guys have said, it's quite a very difficult one for everyone to say, or for anyone to be able to put a hand in and say, we can actually get this done in the next week or the next couple of weeks. So it's really a watch and see what happens. Again, thank you to the panel members for making the time to be with us today to share the knowledge. Again, I think what I will say is that officially the event would come to an end, but because we were waiting for the auction to actually start, I'm actually doing this while watching to see if they've started. If anyone else from the now, I think I could say it's networking time. If anyone from the audience has anything to share, any knowledge, I think if they can show their hands, I can put them up on the panel. They can talk.
One thing I'd say as well. So you just mentioned obviously Warren Buffett. I think within the last couple of weeks, to be fair, Warren Buffett has been quoted probably well over 15, 20 times, and he's had many, many great quotes. I think the main one to remember today is obviously, you know, only when the tide goes out, you start to see who's swimming naked. And I think that is so relevant today, which is basically, you know, the tide's gone out, the market's basically sort of come to a standstill almost, and now you're starting to see who's basically built their businesses on sand or who's built it on solid foundation. So that's just one thing I'd say is looking at things from a solid foundation point of view and starting with a solid foundation.
Okay, excellent. Just now I'm just moderating a networking session, so anyone can feel free at any time to drop off, if they need to get a cup of coffee, tea, or a bottle. We're all working from home, so there's no driving, I hope. So from the audience, the attendees, can anyone share their current experience apart from Khalid that's buying? Who else is actually in the middle of buying a property or doing a property transaction right now? Can you just share the experience with us, please? Just by show of hand, I can promote you to the panel. Anyone that's selling or buying? Is there anyone? Let me see. Any hands?
I can share my experience,
Okay,
if that's
absolutely.
okay. So I'm working on a project to convert a doctor's surgery to some service accommodation units.
Okay.
And my experience currently is that a lot of the lenders that I would normally exit a bridge onto have disappeared from the market. So what that's led to is a lot of the bridging lenders have decided to pull out as well from lending. So it's proven quite a big challenge getting a lender to fund the development work that needs to go into the conversion. So, you know, the stuff being said about Together is one of the lenders. There's some others as well who have just completely just shut up shop. So in terms of lending or borrowing in the hospitality market, I think that there's probably no one out there. If anyone knows of somebody, please do let me know. But that's my experience at the moment.
Okay, great. Any comment at all to that? If not, there's a different person, Mike. I'm going to authorize Mike to talk. Mike,
sorry, just to add on to that point.
Okay.
We as a company obviously are still lending. Unfortunately, we don't do pure development. We don't do foundational work from the ground up. We don't do that, unfortunately. We do offer heavy refurb, so as long as it's within the shell of a building. So effectively, what we do is like traditional, not traditional, but like your development bridges, who will give you a build cost, usually 100%, and then say 50% acquisition, whatever the actual deal is. We would certainly help with the acquisition, but we don't do like a build cost. So it's all about, you know, what funds are required. So as long as it's within the shell of the building and it's not something that needs to be demolished and then built back up, we can certainly assist with that. And we do get a lot of inquiries to exit a development as well. So whilst we can't offer a contingency and a build cost, we can certainly help with the acquisition and then any work that's done within the actual shell of the building, schedule of work, schedule of costings, things like that. So, you know, it's not for everybody, but it certainly is a product that we, you know, we do, you know, basically complete on quite often. So that was just a, you know, a side point to that about the development works.
Okay, I'll be in touch with you. I didn't see your details in your slides. Could you share that with me?
We can send those to you anyway. Yes, we can
Okay.
send it to you. They are a partner. We work together, actually. I'll get us sent it to yourself.
Thank you so much, Kieran and Sam. Cheers.
Mark, then after Mark, they've got Lucy. Mark, do you want to have a go? Hello? Okay. Go on. Hello?
Hello, it's Matt Clow speaking.
Okay, great, yes. What's your experience? What do you want to share with us?
Okay, no problem. Yeah, what time shall I call you back?
No, you can share. You've got the mic. Go on. Do you have video? You can switch on the video. We can see you.
All right then.
Do you want to switch your video on? Just tell us what's your
Yeah, no, just you sent me an email to call you back, but I don't think we're eligible for anything on the face of it. I just wanted to know your thoughts and just wanted to make sure. Yeah.
Okay. Aaron, did you follow that? Sorry?
Yeah.
Did you get that? Was that a comment or a question?
Mac's not with us.
That's right. Yeah, we don't take a salary.
Yeah, Mac's on the phone. He's on the phone.
Mike is on the phone. Okay. Yeah. Oh, okay. And then I think he had his hand on the. That's what I thought.
Basically,
okay.
a no for us.
So you need to mute him, Sam. You need to mute him.
Yes. Okay. Lucy, please go on. Yes.
Well, with me is that I'm dealing with a company on the side to try to get a mortgage to buy. And as Khalid said before, is kind of like to achieve a completion, which is a bit scared on. My question is come to Sam, which I know I've seen some of your property online because I've been to some of the auction with you guys. And if the property, let's say I saw some of them, there has been sold so much because of the situation at the moment. So if I see a property that I'm interested, do you think like the other guy was saying that maybe it's to either delay the, how you call it, to delay the transaction or maybe to try to get a kind of discount? Would an auction property be the same? Like if you want to buy, as the properties are not being sold, selling, will someone see a property and they're interested? Would they kind of like get in touch with you guys and find a way to negotiate? Now that you have the opportunity to kind of like make the payment transaction for, let's say, not a month, but in long, let's say 6 months or 3 months, would that be an opportunity or would that be an
Absolutely. Absolutely, Lucy. I've done, this is exactly what we do. That's the best question to me today, actually, to actually say what I do. I mean, I run all these events as a hobby, but really the business I do, I acquire properties for people like yourself and negotiate on your behalf to either sell or acquire on your behalf. There's a huge benefit in having being at arm's length from the auctioneers, either selling or buying, and having people like us to leverage our relationship. What we tend to do, like I just explained earlier, I'm negotiating one now for a client to acquire. It's an auction that's taking place either tomorrow, the different auction company. So we intend to acquire that before the auction, but we are going to actually be requesting, and I have done that, it's been accepted, 6 months delayed completion, because it's a probate. The family, they're well-to-do, it's granddad's property, they just want to sell it. Their main aim was to get a committed buyer, not a price. So the fact that they've got a committed buyer, they can exchange, he can get his planning. I've actually spoken to a planning officer. He's going to get all his planning done, probably even go to site before he actually completes. So that is the kind of service that you can get if you approach an auction company through the likes of ourselves, because of the informal relationship that we have with the auctioneers. There are things that they can tell us, they can tell me that they will not tell you. I mean, I meet most every single auction company. I have 1 or 2 contacts that I meet on a weekly basis for coffee, and you chat, so they can feel free to tell me, yes, this client, he just wants to sell. They really don't care as long as there's a committed buyer. Those are the conversations that an auctioneer would not have with you, because they don't know who you are and how you can use that information. So yes, if you see anything on auction that's unsold, you can talk to us. We can help you negotiate it. In terms of the auctions I've just gone through last week and this week, that they've been done online. Now, usually if an auction company has, say, 100 lots, they would take them to the room and then start from lot 1 and offer lot 2, lot 3, until the whole lot is sold. And if no one bids, then no one bids. That is what happens traditionally. However, for the last week and this week, because the auctions have gone online for the first time, most of the auction companies have taken an approach that, because there's been a requirement that you have to register to bid for a particular lot. If no one has registered for a lot, it wasn't offered, because that is in the interest of the vendor, because what you don't want is for your property to go unsold. It has a bit of a negative connotation that it's unsold. So what they've done, unless the people that have registered to bid for a particular property, they didn't offer it. So if you look through auctions, Savills, auction house, and of course, right now, on starting with a network auction, you see a lot of unsold, or withdrawn. If it's unsold, it means it was offered and no one bought it. It didn't hit the reserve. If it's withdrawn, it probably just means there was no interest to bid, they've taken it off, or they didn't have enough legal. Like today, right now, there's an auction going on. I wanted to acquire a property, a HMO in Luton for one of my clients. Their tenants in the property, first, we could not view. Secondly, in the legal part, they didn't have the tenancy agreement. So I advised my client, we're not buying. We cannot bid, because once the gravel comes down, you are bound to buy the property. The auctioneer or the vendor has no obligation to give you any information if you haven't agreed that upfront before. So it was quite tricky. And I said to my client, let's not buy. We're keeping our fingers crossed that if it doesn't sell, then we can go in aggressively and then negotiate under auction conditions, but privately. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed on the behalf of my client that that doesn't sell. But this is the kind of service, this is what I do on a day-to-day basis. So if you're looking at buying a property from any auction company and anyone else, just reach out to me after this session. Yeah. Okay, did that help?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, great, Lucy. Anyone else? I think there's a few hands up on the from the attendees. Let me see. Is there anyone that wants to share any experience again? I think we've got about 30 people still on. We've got this a hand up. Who's that? Who's that? Is that Fatia? Do you have anything to share at all? I've seen a few hands up. Johan? Okay, let me, Clayton? Okay, I think if you put your hand up and I promote you to panel, you have to unmute your mic from your end to actually be able to speak. Is there anyone else that wants to ask a question again?
Yes, I'm thinking to ask. Can I ask?
Okay. Yes. Okay. Now you're on. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, Sam. My other question is, if I do have other properties and I want to remortgage just to have cash on me, just to be ready, is that a good idea or not?
Sorry, say that again.
If I'm thinking to refinance some of the more properties I have, just to have cash, just in case of the situation happening, do you think is that a good idea or not?
Actually, okay, Kieran is just gone off. Yes, I mean, they say, funny enough, I have it on my, if you see this here, right? Let me show you something that I have here. Say, what is that? That says cash is king. This is one of the questions I was meant to ask the panel, and I didn't ask them.
Yeah.
So you've just, this is it. So I'm not making it up. They say cash is king. That's on my question 16, which I didn't go to. I've got quite a few questions here for this. I was actually going to ask the panel, is it the best time for anyone that has access to cash to bring it from under the bed and keep it right in the porch so they can pick it up? Yes, I think right now, cash buyers, like I said, there are two types of buyers on the market. One, sellers, vendors. One, there are vendors that want certainty of sale, like the probate family that I'm negotiating with. They don't need the money, but they want to be sure that someone has bought their granddad's property and they can complete in 6 months, in a year. They don't care, they know it's so. Then there's a different type of vendor that needs the money tomorrow. So those kind of vendors, right now, if you have that cash under your bed, take it out, leave it right in the living room so you can take it out. Those kind of vendors will be very interested in doing deals with someone that says, I can exchange and complete immediately. So yes, if you do have cash, if you have a lot of equity in some properties, it's about time you can actually take that money out. Aaron, do you have any comments to that?
Yeah, one of the first things I said is basically it's stay liquid. And what we're finding with the deals that, we're moving forward with is people who have cash, it's actually without knowing what's happening in the markets, and without trying to time it to the bottom, the fundamentals are the fundamentals. And there's already a lot of value to be had in the market if you can move quickly. Because, touching on what Kieran said, and the demand is there. We need the stock, the houses are there, they're tangible. So if you do have cash, it's a combination of stay liquid, hold on to it, but where you can actually see the value and it makes sense to deploy it. And but if in doubt, just hold on to it, because I don't think we'll see the bottom of the market for a while. And but the fundamentals are the fundamentals. So that's what my advice would be. Now, in particular about going into finance and remortgaging, I think Kieran would be better to take it there, because that starts to get into a funny bit. If you have to, depending on whether you've got pure residential or you've got commercial, because when we look at some of the stuff that started to happen in the last recession, when the lenders started to come back, because obviously the lending covenant, the lending contract had changed because of depressed values, and people started to ask for more cash back to kind of shore up the LTV. So you've got to be careful and just watch. It's slightly different. The balance sheet's a little bit different, and the government's pumped a lot more liquidity. But in a nutshell, if you're liquid, stay liquid. But if you see something that's a no-brainer and the fundamentals work, strike fast, on heart, because long term this will be fine.
Kieran, do you have any views on that?
Yeah, just to add on to Aaron's point, and I'm in agreement with him. I mean, effectively, the way that I would look at things is that I would be optimistically cautious. I would be very much doing your homework, do your research. There are certain areas in the UK, Leeds and Manchester, for example, where supply and demand, is something that is a great prospect to invest in. I'm talking about resi, mostly at the moment. What I would say is that for people who are saying, is now the right time? Yes, it could be. Certainly people will make a lot of money in this current situation, but we are talking, it's all about context. So if you're a first time buyer or first time, it's the first investment property you're going to purchase, be realistic. I personally wouldn't invest in any commercial assets. Currently, I think that they will be extremely high risk. I think the high street's already suffering, and it's going to actually be detrimental, all of this, to it. A lot of people are going to start closing their offices and start working remotely to cover their overheads. I think that high street shops are going to be, as Saif said earlier, people aren't paying rent because they can't pay rent, so the high street's going to suffer. I have noticed that people who are been in the industry for 25 years plus, they obviously have the ability to invest in, let's say commercial assets like like a tire center, like a mechanical type place, because we'll always need cars. But what my point is that they're in a position where they can do that, and they can pose higher risk. So I would say, if you're starting out, start realistic, stay within your means. Cash is king. If you've got it and you feel like you can be, I mean, obviously London's a different world to the UK. Like, the prices are obviously massively different, but if you feel like the asset you're going to invest in is a solid opportunity where you have tenants who are lined up, if you're in that luxurious position and such forth, by all means, like Aaron said, why not to take the plunge? But stay within your means, do your research, and if cash, keep on to it if you don't think it's something that you feel comfortable with. But there are going to be people who take risks and people who take bigger risk and smaller risk, but fundamentally now is a time for a lot of people to jump on it. So yeah, it's all about context, really.
Then thanks for that, Kieran. I mean, just to further qualify what Kieran said about I have a take on the high street. Yes, you have to be very careful investing now in commercial assets on the high street. However, there's some assets on the high street that you should be falling over yourself to pick up. Right now, when it comes to PD, which is a permitted development, everyone knows what it can do Your grandmom, everyone's grandmom knows what they can do in a 3-bed semi-detached. You can build 6 meters into the garden. You can wrap around on the garage. You can go into the loft. Every single granddad, grandmom knows what you can do. However, when it comes to commercial world, it's a lot more. There's 1,000,001 things that you can do with a property under permitted development. For instance, you can take a shop and convert the top into 2 flats as a PD. You can there's some shops that have very good access from the back. You can repurpose those into maybe studios, which would actually be a lot more stable. As you can, so basically, what happens is commercial properties are valued very differently from residential. A residential property is brick and mortar. Everyone knows on a 3-bedroom on a street how much a 3-bedroom semi-detached will go for, plus or minus X. But on the high street, is all depending on cash flow, footfall on the street. So if you can go to a high street where there's not a lot of footfall, the property prices are a bit depressed, but you are educated enough to see that property and say, I can do this with it. And you can do something different. And that's where auctions come in, where you go to an auction and some people are like bidding like mad. And you're thinking, what's happening to these people? Because you don't know what they know. And as Alex said, you don't know what you don't know. So it's about being educated, having the right people work with you. Just about 2 or 3 auctions ago, there was an auction lot which I've been looking at it to actually share down in Waltham on Thames. It was a coral shop and a flat above. It was going for about 270. If you bought that, you should pray that coral goes out of business, because without the tenant in there, you can make a lot more out of that property than with the tenant in there, because you can repurpose it, you can convert it into a property. You can convert the flat upstairs into 2 flats, which will probably you'll make all your money with profit. You can convert the shop downstairs. So it's about education. It's about knowing what you can do with a property. So again, this is why we are actually going to run an event with Jay Howard on what we call exit strategy. Jay is one of the best on exit strategies that I know. So when I look at auction lots, and I do say I look at it, my auction catalog for me is like a Bible. You know, people that go to church, you read the Bible over and over. Some of us think that it's the same thing you're reading over and over. Why do you read it over and over? That is a question that people ask me. Sam, it's the same auction law. Why do you read it over and over? But every time when I look at the Savills auction law, if I look through the list and I look through again the next day, I see it differently. I see them from a different angle. That is the education that you need. You need to be working with someone that has that ability to look at an auction lot and see it differently and say to you, you know what, if you're taking this auction lot in Burnt Oak, this shop, yes, it's a big shop, it's a narrow, long shop, it's not doing too well, the tenant is going out of business, but when you buy this shop, and I think the PD rights here, you can convert the top into flats, you can do studios at the back, and then have a smaller shop that you can then have a smaller business as opposed to the big business that's in there. So there are deals to be done. If all you have to do is know what you're looking for. Okay, so I think I hope that helped. Anything else? Is there anyone else? Let me see. I think there's a hand up. Yeah. Did that help at all? Okay, let me see who else is still here. Like I said, now we're just networking. If anyone needs to get off somewhere, they can actually get off and go. Let me just take a few more questions before. Okay, I'm going to allow you. Okay, okay, John, you're on now, and you can unmute yourself and you can talk. Hello, Yeah, I think I'm trying to unmute you so you can talk now. Hello.
And
Yes.
I wanted to know about the event that you mentioned. Is that open for the public or?
You mean the event tonight about
Yeah.
tax, or on Saturday?
Yeah, only the events.
Okay, yes, we have an event this evening on tax. We have a tax specialist. He's one of the top specialists in the country. He will be doing a 2 hours event, 1 hour presentation on everything tax, and a 1 hour Q&A. So if you have any tax related issues, please be back this evening. And then on Saturday, the 11th, we have a whole day event, which is a paid event. But RT is actually put in a link, which there's a discount. If you need to understand how best to take opportunity of the current market and make some transactions at auctions, we would actually spend a whole day with you on Zoom. We've done quite a few of these from a hotel, but this will be the first one that we're going to do on Zoom. So it's a whole day on Saturday. We'll tell you the ins and outs of auctions, how you can find auction lots, how you can actually approach them, what will be how you can get them valued. So we are still working on getting David Sadiman maybe 30 minutes to an hour presentation. David Sadiman runs the EIG group. EIG is a system that every single auction company actually uses. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So would you send some information and link that?
Absolutely. I think RT should have sent. I think there's some information within the chat, but we'll actually send an email to everyone that's on this event today. We'll do that. We'll follow that up shortly. Actually. Okay. I've got someone else on. Yes.
Lovely.
Yeah. I hope that was
Yes, great. Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'll put my email here because I don't think I'm on the list.
Did you register for your email?
Yeah, I will put it here on the
on the chat. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, RT will send that to you. Yes. Okay. I think Roy, you have the floor. Roy.
Yes, Sam. This is Roy, the architect. I was intrigued by your response to auctions where the property had been withdrawn.
Okay.
The reason being is that I was studying my auction Bible like you do.
Okay, excellent. That makes two of us believers, huh?
and I had a portfolio of properties that I was really keen to see how they sold for a comparison to mitigate my risks.
Okay.
And literally all of them were withdrawn. And I was surprised, but I really want to feel from you, when this happens, do those properties come back on the market again, or no, they've just been withdrawn and they won't be seen again?
No, okay. There are a few things that happen. There are a few scenarios that play out when a property comes listed and then withdrawn, not on sale. One, it's it could be that the legals were not out in time. So the how long ago was this?
It was 3 days ago.
Okay, 3 days. Okay, if it's 3 days ago, then we can actually. Okay, normally without, let me say, from last year or 6 months ago when there was no issues, when you see properties that are withdrawn, it could be that there wasn't enough interest on it, and the auctioneer maybe or the vendor thinks there's no point selling if no one comes to view, and at times they will still offer it actually. Or the lawyers were extremely slow and they haven't got their act together to put the legals up in time. That's why at times when people come to me, when I get clients and I want to move them to a different solicitor, they're very hesitant because maybe they've got a family friend as a solicitor. But I say to them, it's a different mindset. Solicitors that do auctions, they know that it can make a big difference between if you sell or you don't sell when you put a legal pack up. As soon as the auction list gets emailed out, if your legal pack is ready, you have a maximum amount of viewings. But if most solicitors are not used to auctions. They will actually put the legal pack up about a day or two before the auction. You don't get that many viewings because people don't want to view properties if they don't know if they can buy or not. So that could be that. But in terms of if it's 2 days ago, it would have been withdrawn if there's no interest to bid. So the auction companies would withdraw it if no one actually registered to bid, because in a room situation, anyone can turn up on the day and bid. So you give it a chance. You still offer the property in case someone is coming to bid. But with the current situation of COVID, where people have to register upfront, do your proof of funds, do your KYC, anti-money laundering. If no one has offered to bid on a property or portfolio, then it's highly unlikely that they will offer it, because for the interest of the vendor, it's good not to market, not to tarnish the property. By the way, that portfolio, was it being offered as a portfolio or as individual properties?
It was individual properties.
Okay, because I'm actually selling a portfolio at auction, but I'm offering it for my client as individual properties. So some we believe some are very likely to sell, but some are not going to. I've worked around the clock the last week or two to try and see if I can get someone to buy them all in one go. My client was very willing to offer lots of sweeteners if someone can buy the whole portfolio, because mind you, when you see people selling a portfolio, you need to find out why are they selling. You have a lot of people that have a very diverse portfolio, but they've decided to move into property development. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to them if they sell one or two of them, then they're not going to get enough money to do what they want to do.
I understand.
It's either it's all or nothing for some of the people that are selling. So this is where for us as mediator, we play a lot of role, because we ask different questions from what you will be asking as a buyer. And the auctioneers, because they know us, they will be telling us different things from what they would tell you as a normal buyer. So from that point of view, it's always, again, not selling myself, but hey, I wouldn't turn down if you want me to negotiate on your behalf. We'll do it, we'll get it done.
Yeah. What I'll suggest then is that we'll have a conversation when we finish this, because what I'll do is I'll mention to you the strategy that I had regarding these properties, especially now with social housing being kind of the fallback, the rents on those, because the market is just so volatile right now, or depressed. So, but then we can see how your portfolio works with my model, and if it links up, then great, we can try and do something.
Absolutely. And I think one thing, Roy, the good thing about my portfolio that I've got for sale is that the vendor, it's again, like I said, the two words or below market value, I try and stay away from it, because it comes off a whole lot of things that I don't like to deal with. The next thing is a motivated seller. At times I would say I like to use that word, committed seller. I mean, there are motivated sellers, but most sellers who are committed, people tend to think they're motivated. But I guess it's a committed seller, which means, you know, they have a good reason to sell. But if they can't sell it, then they'll keep it. So it's not like, it's not they have to sell. But
no, I get it. I get it. I mean, yeah, I get it, because it's really regarding the strategy, and also now with COVID-19, strategies probably we would have had very recently may have to change, because the model will have to change. Just
absolutely right. I would definitely give you a call.
All right, then. That's fine.
Once we are done from here. I think we've got Lucy. I'm not sure if your hand is still up from before, or is it a new question that you have? Let me unmute you to talk.
Oh, sorry. I think that's it. I'm done with questions. Maybe it was from.
Okay, you still had your hands up, yeah? So maybe I'm sure your hand was hurting now, you know. Yeah. Okay, that's great. I think if without any more questions, we can probably let me lower your hand. If we've still got a few people. Is there any more discussions, or do we want to call it sharp right now? Okay. Roy. Okay. I'm not sure if anyone has got any comment to make. Okay, I think we just before we go off, I'll just show you tonight. This is the event that we've got this evening from 6 p.m. We've got Jamal He will be answering. He will do a 1-hour comprehensive presentation on tax. Like I said, we had an event with him last week with about maybe 500 people locked on with a panel. Him, Samuel Zucchi, but 80% of the questions that we got were on tax. So that's why we thought maybe tax is probably something that a whole lot of people are very worried about. So we decided to do something that would just be on tax. Then again, our auction presentations on Saturday on the 11th, highly recommended to anyone that wants to be armed with the skills of dealing with the auction after the COVID. So on that note, again, I'd just like to thank you all for taking the time to be on this today, and all the best, and hopefully I'll see you later tonight then. Okay, thank you. And Kieran, thank you. So we'll talk shortly. Okay, thank you. Goodbye.
Cheers. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Okay, so I'll see you all. So sure. Hi, Charles.
Hi, Sam.
Hello, hi, Charles. Yes, I was just looking through and I saw yourself in here. So yeah, great. Thanks for coming on board. So how are you finding the money markets?
Well, sorry, I missed the first session because I got confused. I thought it was tonight and I was getting an email about tonight's thing. And then I said, hang on, there's one on now. And then I got on, then somebody rang me and I couldn't ignore the call and I missed some of it. So, but it sounded like it was good. There was some useful stuff there. I don't know, I'm finding it, I've got one house where it's really bad timing. We had a few awkward tenants in the HMO. So I gave notice to a couple of them and only the good ones left. And then because of the awkward tenants, now I've got a half empty house and I've only left with the awkward tenants, you know, and I was trying to empty it out to give it to the council, and even the council now don't want it. So I'm trying to get more tenants in the HMO again. So, but otherwise things seem a bit slow. I know the banks are pulling mortgage deals. I'm having to pay a higher rate on a mortgage deal than I was previously, even though the rates have gone down.
Okay. But I think it's a temporary situation. Hopefully in the next month or two, there's actually 3 months that the government has put said we shouldn't evict tenants. So hopefully you can ride the wave for the next 3 months and get to see the back of the awkward tenant and then getting some good tenants. How's the podcasting coming on? I'm a big fan. I follow your money podcast.
It's I don't know, it's tough. It's kind of trying to build it up is not easy. It takes time, I think. And I was thinking about making some changes to maybe call it a property money podcast rather than just general money stuff, because most of the interest I get is when I put out an episode about property. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you want to share? Do you want to share it in the? We still got about 18 people on the chat. Maybe you can share it out to property people. The link to your money chat, so that people can listen, because you offer some great. I go jogging quite a lot, so when I go jogging, I queue up a few podcasts to listen. And some days I listen to your podcast. It's
thank you, Sam.
A good one for people that want to hear about money. Yeah, so that's good. So Charles, it's good, always good to talk to you, and we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, let's have a chat, because you know, I'm still looking around for stuff if I can find things, and maybe I could interview one of you or one of your guys on my podcast. We can do a joint thing. I like the way you use Zoom today. That seems good.
Absolutely. If you want to come on one of the Zooms, because we've got quite a few Zoom coming up. So yeah, we can have a chat and maybe get you on one of the panels. So it's always good to have a very diverse point of
Yeah,
view.
sure.
Yeah, so it'll be good. Yeah.
So you seem to be doing well. That's good. You seem to be very busy and doing well. So that's great.
Wow, thanks. We we keep busy in lockdown time. So yes. Okay. So
all right,
yeah.
so I'll
So,
let you go.
that's it. So I think it's everyone is gradually walking off. So yes. So we talk again soon.
Okay, Sam.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Bye. Okay.
No. Bye.